Slushy 08.
Hey everybody, welcome to Anime Slushy. It's me, Phoenix.
Hey, it's me, Cube.
And it is the present day.
And it's the present time. Blah.
So, today we're talking about a weird show that we both liked. Cube's liked for a long time and I watched for the first time recently, called Serial Experiments Lain.
Yes. See, this is a show that I've liked since I saw it when I must have been like a preteen or like a young teen, and it was on a TV channel called Tech TV that used to exist and died. And they just got a bunch of fucking like weird random anime like Last Exile and Lane. And so it's like you'd watch Toonami for your action stuff, and then you go over there and you'd see some weird shit. And Lane, I think, was one that really stuck with a lot of people, especially around my age, just because it's very weird and confusing if you're a young person, and probably for most adults.
But the imagery is sort of cool, so it will kind of stick with you.
Yeah. It's like, whoa, anime could be this too? Whoa.
I don't know what's going on, but it's cool.
Yeah, and it seems very like philosophical and scary. Ooh. What year was Lane?
I think it was 99?
Let's see, 1998.
98, okay, I was pretty close. It was one series, 13 episodes, so it's a little self-contained story. Now, because we both liked it, and we would encourage you to watch it if it's your sort of thing, we're going to start by just talking about it in general, without spoilers, and tell you what we thought of it. And then we'll let you know when we get into spoilers. You're not going to have anything ruined as much as you could ruin any part of Lane, because it's kind of hard to say what even happened.
Yeah, Lane is a very philosophical anime. It's the kind where a lot of people watch it and they'll be like, like, if you want a mind fuck that makes no goddamn sense, watch Lane. It's not that nonsensical, goddammit, but it is, a lot of weird shit does happen. Yeah,
it's not nonsensical. It does make sense, but it is obtuse. Like,
yes.
it's not holding your hand on any of this. It isn't going to answer all the questions it's set up either.
It's just not lols to random.
No. It's not completely like random and weird.
It's pretty low budget, though the way that they use their small budget is very creative a lot of the time. But it definitely, like, if you start watching it, you might be like, this seems like slow and kind of cheap looking and I don't get it. But you gotta stick with it because it is good.
So it's about a girl called Lane.
Yes.
Yeah, she's an 8th grade student a girl she sort of knows from school commits suicide. And then everyone at the school starts getting emails from her.
Yes. Yeah. Spooky emails.
Lane gets specific emails directed to her asking her to come and join her in a place called The Wired, which is their version of the internet, essentially.
Yeah, because they have to have like a cool cyberpunk word for it. They can't just call it the internet.
No. It's sort of set in a near future, or like what was the near future for 1999.
What are you talking about? It said in present day, present time,
It says that at the start of every episode in a weird, it's a person speaking in English and laughing.
Yeah, and it's just like some like random guy voice, like, who's that?
Yeah, there's not even someone in the show.
The creators.
Yeah. Yeah, and so she sort of starts to investigate The Wired and what it is and what things are like on there. And it goes from there. And yeah, it's philosophical and it's kind of spooky. It's surprisingly prescient and ahead of its time for a show about the internet in 1999 in 1998, in terms of like the things it has to say about online culture and the way people sort of talk on the internet and behave, and yeah.
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to remember exactly what the internet was even like back then. Of course, I guess it was probably around the time like what her dad's computer looks like, where everything's all beveled and embossed and shit.
Yeah. The way it sort of depicts internet subculture. And the effect of like what being on the internet sort of looks like, and how it affects the way you behave, I guess.
Yeah, and like the concept of having like an online you and a real world you that are different but still the same, but act differently. And it's like I guess all that was already going on back then, but it still feels just as relevant in its own way.
Yeah,
even if all the computers look funny and stuff now.
Which is amazing for like a 21-year-old show.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. As Coop said, like it was made cheaply, but they did a lot with the money they had, and it has a very sort of unique look, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely not like, you don't look at it and think like generic anime.
No, it has a very distinct sort of thing it does. And a lot of the imagery is is very stark, and the way it uses sound and everything else as well. Its sound design's really interesting. It really likes sort of focusing on the sound of computers of the period. Like it has a strong sort of cyberpunk aesthetic without being like a full sort of retro 80s thing. It's more of like it likes sort of depicting like, just like cables running everywhere and old PCI cards and computers of that period as well. It's cool. It's got a very cool aesthetic. It's worth watching almost for that aesthetic alone, or at least checking out.
Yeah, and in terms of the sound design, it's always got that wire hum anytime there's an outdoor shot. Instead of like any other kind of nature sounds or whatnot, it's always just like boom, constantly in the background.
Instead of those crickets you normally hear in anime. It's got, yeah.
Yeah. The one cricket loop every anime uses.
Yeah, that one. Ugh. If you're not into shows that are obtuse and a bit weird and aren't going to answer all the questions they set up like really definitively, this might not be for you, I don't think.
Yeah, and or if you're not down for like a kind of bummer of a show, because there are definitely bummer aspects.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it starts off with a suicide.
Yeah, yes, exactly. It sets the tone early. Like you get the tone it sets early on will be the tone it maintains for the entire show.
Yeah.
And the ending is a kind of a bummer as well.
Yeah. It's bittersweet, but still pretty bummery.
Yeah. Oh, it's pretty bummery. It's not like bittersweet in the sort of Madoka terms. It's a bit more bummery than that. I could understand people being frustrated with it as a show, or possibly not being quite getting into it early on, like 3 or 4 eps in. It's worth your time to keep going and sort of push through it.
Yeah, the pace does pick up. I noticed, like, upon rewatch, like, the first few episodes are very much, like, mood setting and very quiet, and then things get a little crazier as they go on. But besides that, I guess either you're gonna watch it or you're not gonna, but you should have by this point if you're gonna keep listening.
Yes, that's true.
But if you're not gonna, I know how it is sometimes, you're busy, whatever, but we'll tell you about it then.
One other good thing, though, about watching it is you can watch it for free. That is free anime.
That's right. Funimation put the whole thing on YouTube, both subbed and dubbed. That was even before this, but there's that whole thing that they did recently where they made it open source, and you can use Lane however the fuck you want. It's an interesting move. I guess they figured, like, hey, this is kind of a cult hit that we're not really making any money off of anymore, so let's see if this gets some buzz.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you would do with it, to be honest. Make a video clip or something? I don't know.
Make a remix.
Yeah. It does have a wonderfully sort of Sheryl Crow-esque opening theme as well. Like there are some aspects
of it. That'll be so fucker good.
There are some aspects of it that are like a little bit dated.
I'll kill you.
Come on. It does sound very 90s.
Yeah, but it's real pretty and the imagery is so nice and the time stops and then she like sadly walks away from her hat and is good.
It is good, but it's also 90s.
You know what, Phoenix? And you don't seem to understand.
Yes.
A shame. You seemed an honest man.
I'm very dishonest. I don't know what else to say about it without going to spoilers, but if you like spooky, sort of mysterious, philosophical kind of stories, if you like computer culture from that period, if in particular you are like me and like a massive fan of Apple computers, there's a disturbing number of shout-outs.
Yeah, I didn't realize you were such a huge Apple nerd to be able to actually get those references.
Yeah, in my past I was a Apple geek, and it's like this is the period that I grew up in, that I was sort of around for when Apple was not particularly cool. and
so you were the perfect target audience for those weird ass references.
Oh yeah. No, they blew me away. Like there was such insane deep cuts because I don't know, everyone who worked on the show was a massive Apple nerd, I guess.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, but yeah, that part of it was amazing. So yeah, if you're one of like the other person who's like me, I guess that this is also for you. Definitely go check it out because we are going to get into spoilers as much as the show can be spoiled.
But yeah, you've been sufficiently warned at this point. All right, so let's get into fucking episode 1 then.
Episode 1. All right.
Pew, 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 pew. So, like we said, it starts with Chise, who's a girl that's Lane's classmate, committing suicide. She jumps off a building. I like the way that it's framed with like the people going about their stupid ass lives down there, and then like her body drops, and then everyone's just kind of like like that weird quiet when you're trying to figure out what the fuck just happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was kind of interesting and tasteful.
It was. Like, we don't see the body or anything. We hear it, but we don't see it. If there is something grotesque or violent in this, it tends to be handled pretty classily. And there is some pretty gross stuff in there. But yeah, and they're not really friends so much as just classmates because Lane doesn't really seem to have any friends. She's she's very, very quiet, shy sort of girl.
Yeah, because once it kind of does that scene and establishes that, we see Lane, and has a lot of weirdness around her, even in episode 1. But she's this cute little middle school girl. She's got short hair, and apparently the designer wanted it to look like she had cut her hair herself and like made a little ponytail out of that extra bang to the side. And it's cute.
Yeah, she has one weird side bang that has like a little a hair tie, but. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's cute and distinctive.
Yeah, it is.
And she's on the train, and she's hearing these weird murmuring voices, and she's like, "Shut up!" And everybody around her looks at her like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" But it's because she's hearing dead people's voices from the internet.
Somehow.
But you don't know that until later.
No.
This is one of those shows where it's hard to talk about what's going on because a lot of to be able to know what's going on to talk about, you have to is technically spoilers for later episodes usually.
Yeah, I'm sort of wondering if it's almost hard to dissect episode by episode because you're really not so much of it you just do not know what is going on until you get to the very end and go back and look again.
Yeah.
Yeah, do we want to just start talking about Lane's deal now?
Yeah, fuck it. Okay, so wait, do you just want to go what do you think Lane is?
It's hard to say. The actual sort of thread of the story is basically Lane finding out what she is.
Yes.
And what she is some sort of sentient being that was actually born on the internet. And it's not complete. Kind of.
Oh, wait, here, yeah. You go through your understanding of it.
Okay.
And I'll just hold my knees and smile.
Okay.
Because we're talking about Lane.
So this is the thing. I've only seen it the once and gone back and taken a few notes. Whereas Cube has spent the last 20 or so years thinking about Lane.
Shut up. But it's funny because, the last time I watched it, I was like, okay, Lane is definitely this. And now I have, even this time rewatching it, I have a different idea of exactly what I think she was. So it's that kind of show where it gives you a lot of information, but you can interpret it kind of how you want.
Yeah, it's left ambiguous enough that it kind of works. And the ambiguity, I think, is actually very clever because it allows them to sort of touch on a bunch of different things at once. Because as a science fiction show, it does do that sort of. It talks about very personal experiences about what it's like to be a person who's on the internet and has a different persona, and the way those sort of things go. But it's also it's because it's so abstract. It's got enough room to sort of move around and actually treat those ideas like a sci-fi concept too, and explore that half of it as well, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so Lane, what Lane is. My current theory is based on there's an episode sort of halfway through the season where they sort of randomly start cutting to just these little explainers about different conspiracy theories.
I fucking love that episode.
So in the middle of the action, in the middle of the plot you're seeing, they start talking about the Roswell and the alien spaceship that crashed at Area 51. And they talk about the Bushes and the Illuminati in America, and just they're basically setting up. This is a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy theory, and then they get
and they're putting in actual photos and stuff. It's so goofy.
Yeah, well, it was a good way to save money too. You don't have to animate these things. And then they get to their conspiracy theory, which is based on something called the Schumann. Is it the Schumann Resonance?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Schumann
and the evil ELF band or whatever.
Yeah, there's a thing called the Schumann Resonance that's put out. This is a real thing, by the way. That's put out by the Earth's magnetic field. It's basically like a radio wave, or a series of radio waves that are in a very extremely low frequency bands, 4 hertz a second or something like that. And it talks about how those bands and the wired, which is the internet, sort of are able to communicate with each other in a sense. And also that those bands can also sort of they move in a similar way to human thought patterns in a way.
Yeah. I think they reference some actual Guy's theory about it being tied in with the collective unconscious, basically.
Yeah.
Just one of those kinds of goofy fringe theories.
Yeah. It is a very goofy theory, but it seems to be the basis for what Lane is. And what Lane might be is the Earth or the collective unconscious, or which are possibly the same thing, that because the wired exists, had something that it could communicate with and started to experience the world in itself. And that's sort of maybe what Lane is.
Yes. That's pretty close to my understanding of it.
Yeah. She might be the Earth and the resonances that it's putting out acting like brainwaves because they've finally got because previously they're just waves shooting out into the out into space, and they've got nothing to there's got no way to experience anything, and they've got no way to speak to anything. But the wired gave these resonances like a thing that it could move on, where it could talk to, like it could see other humans and talk to other humans, and it started to begin to sort of experience itself. So one of the other things that you see that happens to Helene as she's sort of early on as she's investigating the wired, it turns out that there's this other version of Lane running around.
Oh, the troll Lane?
Well, there's
or
three.
The confident Lane.
The confident Lane. So there's three. Eventually there's 3 lanes, but at first she only knows about this first one. And that lane has apparently been around for a while. And every time everyone sees her, like the lane is walking around in the real world, they think she's the other lane. And they're sort of intimidated by her because this other lane, that whoever they are, is sort of a badass. And it's quite clearly established as well that the physical lane we're seeing, they're definitely not the same person, which is strange. But
Kinda.
Yeah.
But as in, like, she's not doing
physically,
those things.
physically, she wasn't in 2 places. This isn't a memory loss thing. This was a genuine other, like, sentient being running around doing stuff that's not her. But everyone thinks it's her because they look exactly the same. So yeah, that's sort of what Lane is. And when you go back and look at it, it's because you've got the Lane we know, who's this very, very timid, shy, quiet girl. You've got the confident Lane who's running around doing stuff, who you occasionally see our Lane behave like. Very occasionally.
Yeah.
And
but in her base state, she's kind of Lane's persona on the wired.
Yeah.
On the internet.
And so and then there's a third Lane who's sort of an evil troll.
Yeah, troll Lane.
There's this nice sort of interplay between like quiet Lane, quiet in real life Lane, and confident Lane is kind of like an analogy for a person's in real life persona and their online persona, where they're able to sort of and this is what I mean by where it talks about like this feels like a personal analogy, where it's like, okay, well, yeah, you've got the Lane who is the Lane online. That's me online, where I'm not as intimidated by other people like actually in my face, and I'm more free to be who I am. And the in real life version of myself, who is much more sort of afraid and tamped down. But then it also treats it like a sci-fi thing in that this is actually Lane's. This is the 3 versions of Lane are kind of like the id, the ego, and the superego, and they're actually because she started off as existing within like the wired kind of. They actually are these 3 separate things that are running around doing their own thing. Yeah. Yeah. So it's
my only big difference is that I think of Lane as like, because at one point she says that she's a program made to break down the barrier between the wired and the real world. And I think that's semi-true. Like, I think that she's an avatar of this collective unconscious force that specifically exists to bring it to the level of, like complete consciousness with everybody. But then like she kind of gained her own sentience and stuff because of other factors.
Okay.
I do think she existed kind of before the wired, but wasn't like a person before all these. Because Lane says that I don't want to talk about it until we're talking about the episode.
Okay, fair enough.
It feels wrong.
Yeah, I mean, my only thing with that is that I think she might have said that because that's what someone was trying to use her to do.
Yeah, that's and like there's definitely times when she has misconceptions about exactly what she is because of what Aerie told her, but he was also wrong in his own way.
Yeah. He had some understanding of what she was, but he didn't fully understand what she was too. There's this dude you eventually meet who it turns out has been manipulating Lane for his own ends, because his goal is to try and mesh the wired and the real world, so you end up with sort of an instrumentality type thing where everyone's constantly connected all the time.
Yeah.
Like a great big one mind, which is sort of, again, is tapping back into that collective unconscious thing. It's like the idea of bringing the human collective unconscious to the forefront.
But he wants to be the god of this new world and humanity.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm going to bring everyone to the next level, and I will be the god of that.
Because he sort of did what Lane's classmate who committed suicide did, which was sort of insert themselves into the wired and exist there instead of here anymore, which is kind of sort of maybe what happened to her friend, her classmate. Maybe.
Yeah, but she didn't because he put his like whole deal in with the Live 7 protocol so that he can control things, whereas Chisei can only be an internet ghost and
Yeah.
send emails.
Yes. Bearing what we just told you about what Lane probably is in mind, the next few episodes are probably going to make more sense as we go through them. Because I think that part of it you needed to understand before we go forward. Because that will explain most of what you're hearing and seeing, basically. I think.
Yeah, because Lane in the first episode is seeing a lot of like weird illusions a lot of the time, and so she sees like dead people. She sees like a vision of Chisei, and there's a time when she's on the train and she sees this vision of blood dripping down, and then she like sees a vision of herself seeing the person being hit by the train, and it's because she's able to hear the dead people's voices over the internet and kind of read their thoughts or whatnot, and so they're able to like send her kind of shitty communication, and so she's like hearing and seeing things from their internet thoughts.
Yeah, like Lane in her ultimate form is sort of omnipotent.
Yes.
And but this version of Lane who's walking around, who is like a physical real being walking around in the world, is not aware of any of this for the majority of the show. Like,
yeah, so in episode 1, she's just like a girl who's seeing a bunch of weird shit, and she's like, "Buh."
yeah, it's not even clear how long she's existed for. Like, it's in as much as she hasn't existed her entire life, as far as she knows. As in, like,
yeah.
she might only be like she might have only been inserted that day, or
Yes, I saw a theory. Someone said that they thought that this was actually us seeing the first day that she's there, and that's part of why she's like hallucinating and stuff more than she does later, like where she's looking at her hands and all the smoke is coming out of them and stuff, because she's still kind of like not quite adjusted to being a physical being. It's possible.
This is all possible because there is like some explicit memory manipulation thing that happens. So it is possible for the idea of just putting a person into inserting a person into the world and everyone else thinking, oh yeah, that's Lane, is possible because it is on some level possible to manipulate people's memories like that because they are actually connected to the internet even if they don't know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Lane doesn't know any of that yet, so she's just a baby who's like having kind of weird, trippy visions, and she goes home and she has her shitty old computer, which I love. What does it look like?
It's modeled off a 20th anniversary Macintosh, which was a special Mac that Apple put out when the company turned 20, not the Mac itself, in 1997, which they only sold. They explicitly only sold 10,000 of. They were very expensive at the time. They looked like a very, very early sort of prototype of like the flat screen iMac because the computer was mostly just like a big flat thing. But it's like I urge I'll put a photo of these up on the podcast player, and I urge you to go look them up. They're incredibly sort of 90s retro. And again, what I was saying about Apple just not being a very cool company at this time, like the way they did this, if you bought one, the computer was driven out to your house in a limo, and a dude in a tux with white gloves would come into your house and set it up. They just did weird shit like this.
I mean, that sounds pretty hip in a weird way.
Yeah, it's just strange. But yeah, but it was sort of considered like a cutting edge design, which I guess is why they kind of modeled Lane's computer off that. Lane's
but
computer
it looks like a big
kiddie.
clunky silly thing now.
Yeah, it looks like a kiddie version of that because it's bright red and yeah. But yeah, she's got this shitty little computer, so she asks her dad, "Look, can I get a better system?" And her dad's a computer nut, and he's kind of excited because like, yeah, you want to get more into this? Sure, this sounds good.
Yeah, and it shows him, and he's in his room full of a bunch of computers. He's like, hey, I'm typing. Ooh, look at me, I'm on the internet. Ooh, it's so great, I love it.
It's kind of like the idea is that if you have like a basic computer, you can only send emails and shit. But if you have a really like tricked up machine, you can actually like enter a VR version of the internet to some extent.
Kinda, yeah. We never know the extent to which like when other people go into the wired, like, are they experiencing it in a VR escape, or is that just a metaphor for them looking at their computer screen?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I did get the impression that like depending on how powerful your computer was how deep you can put yourself into the VR world.
Yeah, they talk about manifesting, like how that one guy can only manifest as a mouth and some people can only manifest as an ear. But I don't know how you would interact if you literally were only like an ear in space.
I guess it's more like you can put on goggles and you can like look around a bit at like files and stuff, but you can't like actually like walk around in the space so much. It's like
Yeah.
maybe I don't know. It's hard to tell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because most of the time when you see people actually interacting with the internet, it's incredibly abstract.
Yes.
Yeah.
But she logs onto her old Navi and she does get a message from Chise and she's like, "Why did you die?" And Chise said, "Because God is here." And then it's all ending song.
Warning about the ED. It is like a sort of naked lane, but not like you don't see anything, but she's naked lying in a pile of wires. So
Yeah, it's more like that 90s naked where it doesn't feel so gross, but it
Yeah.
is kind of like, whoa, hey naked lane.
It's about it.
Hey, whoa, hey.
It's as close as horny as the show ever gets. I would say. I think
Pretty much, yeah.
this isn't a horny show, except for that one bit. But that's not really horny.
Nah.
Either, so yeah. I did like her dad because this is the thing. Her parents like she's got a sister who's like the older sister who's just kind of a bit whatever.
She's one of the bigger mysteries for me, actually.
She is, but she's like when I say she's whatever, she's whatever sort of teenager.
Yeah.
She's got a mum who is very cold and kind of creepy. She doesn't talk too
Yeah,
much.
her mom is constantly creepy on Maine. Like, whereas her dad, like, has kind of subtle creepy aspects, her mom is just always like, "Oh, that's nice, Lane."
Her dad is like most of the time he's like his sort of resting mode is just like a sort of a goofy dork.
Yeah,
But,
he seems like a person.
He does, but then like it is funny the way that like I did like when like he was saying, "Oh, you're ready to upgrade from your kitty computer," da 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 da, and then she says, "No, I want something really good," and then he just sort of gets serious for a moment, and as he does that, he's wearing glasses. The shine covers his eyes in that very anime way,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Oh, you're serious."
But I think
Okay.
it's because he realizes that it means that she's gonna start becoming her true form now.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, okay, we're fucking doing this."
Okay, yeah. So spoilers. Her family is also fake, kind of.
I think
Maybe.
her dad is a physical person, at least. I don't know about the mom or the sister.
I don't. You never see the family interact with anyone else, do you? I think they
Wait.
are. I think they are physical people, but so is Lane. So you have the ability to
Yeah.
create. Whoever set this up had the ability to create physical people, and to some extent, I think that her family are also like conscious programs in a sense, who are sentient.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how her dad had that whole, like, when he comes in and talks to her and is real to her about how he's like, "Oh, it was fun playing family for a while. I guess I was jealous of the kind of being you are, blah, blah, blah." I don't know. He really seems like a human person in that moment.
Yeah, he does, but I was sort of thinking that he's like a much more basic program who's like you're the real deal in a way,
It's possible.
because there's also like it gets to a point where the family are sort of no longer necessary to Lane's development, so they just disappear. And right before it happens, her mum and dad are just sort of sitting on the couch going, we're almost done here, aren't we? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, well, come on, let's start making out while we still can. And he's just like, she's kissing him, and he's just sort of staring at the ceiling at Lane's room, because I guess that's way more interesting to him. And I got the impression that's because like she was suggesting that because this is like the last time I'll actually be able to be a physical thing like this.
I thought it was because that they figure that the world is going to break down and become this completely other thing soon. So it's like, let's do this before the cyber apocalypse.
Yeah, also possible. It's hard to say. But
Yeah, who fucking knows? But what's important is that episode 2 is about cyber drugs.
Yeah, okay, so the first few episodes do seem kind of more generic in that they deal with things like cyber drugs or online games or also there's even an episode that sort of deals with revenge porn. And so at first it does seem like it's a little ham-fisted, but stick with it. It's not that ham-fisted. It's just sort of it's old enough that it's goofy and fun in what it thinks cyber drugs are going to be like. I would say.
Okay, but the cyber drugs thing is also way more like relevant to the overall story than you would think.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
So we start in a club called Siberia.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some unsing going on. There's a guy who buys some cyber drugs. Again, in that sort of when we were talking about having it like a cyberpunk aesthetic, the cyber drug comes in like a little, like almost like a gel-filled like giant capsule, and you break that open and the gel spills everywhere, and the actual drug is like a tiny little nano machine that's all spiky that you take, and inside the nano machine is a program that makes everything slow down, like it makes you really fast, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it seem like you're experiencing the world in slow motion. And he takes it and he's all like, like wigging out on drugs, and he sees Lane in that moment.
Weird.
Yeah, but it's specifically because it's a cyber drug that it makes him see Lane, because it's the internet Lane. They go back to Lane, and her friends are telling her, "Hey, Lane, we saw you. No, there's no way that was Lane. Like blah blah blah." And she's like, "What are you guys talking about?" And it's because they saw her at that club last night, which obviously from her perspective, she was not there.
No, and the Lane we are seeing, as far as we can tell, wasn't there. Like, that wasn't her.
Yes.
Yeah. We do see a little bit of that Lane, and she does behave very differently. Like, she's sort of...
Yeah, she's all, like, confident and, like, whatever.
And she's sort of dressed racier, and, yeah, it's different person. It's definitely a different person. By the way, just before we move on from this, I just had to go look it up. When we see... There's a little, like, explainer video about how the cyber drug works.
Oh, yeah.
And when we see that, there's all this medical text laid over the top, but it's in English. The text has nothing to do with the drug and isn't even, like... just a blurb about the drug. It's a blurb about like a blood cell growth inhibitor that's like an anti-cancer treatment. So they just wanted to overlay some cool English on this thing, I guess.
Yeah, it makes it seem very informative.
Yeah, but it's actually it's just nonsense.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
By the way, one of her friends is a very important character named Arisu, which in America they just pronounce it Alice, and I think it's supposed to be like Alice. And she's like her one just kind of like normal friend that she's had for a long time, or at least, from her perspective.
I was trying to work this out because like the Arisu has two other friends who are sort of indifferent when it comes to Lane. But Arisu is like, I couldn't work out how long they've been friends, but she is making, but the point is that like she is making a concerted effort to try and befriend Lane and draw her out of her shell.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So I think from her perspective, at least, she's like known Lane for a long time, and maybe they weren't like super good friends, but she's just, like Lane's her nerd friend. Yeah,
and she's always been nice to Lane, and Lane likes her to some extent. Hard to tell because Lane doesn't emote much, but yeah. Basically, she's encouraging Lane to try and come out to this club tonight because they're going to go.
And now you got to remember that they're fucking middle schoolers. And then when they get to this crazy cyberpunk club, there's kids that look even younger than them there who are also kind of important.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of 7-year-olds just hanging out at the club.
I think they're supposed to be about the same age. I guess maybe a few years younger. But yeah, there's this kid called Taro and his two friends, but Taro's the important one. And he just looks like a fucking little kid, and they're just like going to this obviously like should only be for adults raver club. And they're like, "Here we go."
They're just hanging out looking at their sort of like mobile computers. Because, again, it was 1998. People didn't realize that, like, your phone was going to become your computer, let alone the idea of mobile phones.
Yeah, so they have, like, little PDA things.
Well, his looks like a gun.
That's right. His is like a little like, gun trigger thing.
Yeah, and you never actually see how he uses it, which made me think that he mentioned sort of manifesting on the Wired with it, but, like, only in a very, very basic way. So I guess it's just a thing that he has some sort of, like, virtual interface that only he can see when he uses it. I guess I don't know because it's got no screen. This is what I mean by like the technology is hard to. It's future. It's near future, but the technology is like wildly advanced, and it's also near future in the sense that like kids go to clubs now because that's what everyone does. Everyone's going to clubs. Everyone's going raving.
These youths.
By 1999, all your children will be in clubs, like that sort of thing.
Oh no! Present day, present time.
Yeah.
So while they're there, they're at the club. The girls are like, "Woo, let's have fun!" But then a guy pulls a gun, and it's that guy that's been taking the cyber drugs, and he's freaking out. He's shooting around. Everybody's running away, and it's like, "Whoa, what the fuck's happening?"
He does shoot a couple of people, doesn't he?
I think so. Yeah.
I could swear he does. He actually, he's just running around screaming, having a bad trip, and like the Arisu and her friends all like. Try to run and leave, but Lane's just kind of standing stock still, staring at him.
Yeah. And then he's yelling at her and he's like, why are you doing this to me? Why are you making me do this? The internet and the real world can never be one. And then she walks up to him and suddenly she's very serious and she says, no matter where you go, everyone's always connected. And then he shoots himself in the mouth and dies.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Weird.
So what happened though is that she used her internet powers since he was wigging out on that nano machine to control him and make him kill himself to save her and her friends.
Is that what she did?
I believe that's the case.
Right.
The other possibility is that he is doing that because Siberia is controlled by the Knights. And the Knights are a group on the internet that wants to force Lane to give up her physical body and become an internet god person. So it's possible that they put a program in the nano machine, cyber drugs, to make him kill himself to freak her out, to help her break down.
Yeah. So
That's also possible.
In this episode, we introduce these people called the Knights, who are. Yeah,
I don't think we're actually introduced to them until later.
No, we're not introduced to them physically, but we introduced the concept of them. That there's a group called the Knights who exist on the internet who are kind of like internet activists. They behave sort of like terrorists, but as far as anyone can tell, they don't have any. They're not doing anything in the real world. They're just doing stuff.
Yeah,
on
they're
the
just
internet.
like some weird anon hacker group.
Yeah, but no one can work out exactly what it is they want or what they're doing. But they're very powerful.
Yeah, I thought they didn't actually come up yet this episode.
I could swear the kid talks about them or mentions them or something, or there's one of those little sort of. There'll just be segments sometimes where you hear random voices talking about something. I could swear it's either that episode or the episode after.
Later.
It might be later, yeah.
Yeah.
But at first, people think that Lane is connected to the Knights, or like that she might be their boss or something. But because people on the wide know Lane, and she's very mysterious. She's kind of a myth, maybe. Like they're not quite sure if she actually exists, but like there's people who say that they've seen her. And she's very powerful and she does cool shit. And again, Lane has no idea what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah. That's why when I watched Lane a few years ago again, I came away with the idea that Lane was basically like a meme that was given a physical form as a person. So like the reason there's so many Lanes is because everyone has this different concept of this meme person who never had an original self that is Lane.
Okay.
And I think there's still an element of that.
Yeah.
Because there's that part where Aries like, you were the hero of all of their stories and whatnot. So Lane is kind of like this cult's mythical figure on the internet that is like a mix of people's rumors and also the actual thing that whatever she is.
Yeah, because that guy does talk. He does talk a bit about. There's that riff on what a god is and like how a god has power only if it has worshippers because they sort of make him manifest. And a god that exists without worshippers doesn't really exist and da da da. But yeah, so I guess that could be what they're getting into there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically the Knights is a group that they want Lane to become this cyber god thing. And so they actually are responsible for a lot of weird shit that happens in the show. But it's very unclear at the time. You have to like figure that out by going back and being like, oh, okay, so he mentioned that they control the club. So then this was a blah, 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 blah. Okay.
Now there's also these other dudes that we see hanging around outside Lane's house.
Oh, yeah.
Who are wearing, like, cool cyber goggles.
Yeah.
They cover both their
These
eyes.
fucking men in black
two
cyber boys.
Two dudes in black suits, one tall, one short, wearing cyber goggles. And we don't really hear them talk, or they just kind of menace for the most part.
Yeah, and they don't seem to give a fuck when Lane sees them. Like, the first time she sees one of them, he's, like, standing half behind a pole. Like, almost like he's hiding, but not really.
Yeah.
And she just like looks at him and he's just like staring at her and he doesn't give a fuck.
So the next episode was the one about the online game?
I think so, because, like, the next episode actually starts with them at the police questioning thing.
Oh, yes, good.
And there's a weird element where the police try to contact her parents and they can't get in touch with her parents, which is, like, kind of lending to the idea that maybe they don't exist. But the next day at school, everyone's talking about how all that happened. And then, she gets the she gets the psych processor in her shoe locker. She gets a weird letter with a weird new piece of technology for her.
Yeah. And the psych processor is some sort of really powerful chip that would allow you could plug it into pretty much any computer and it would allow you to manifest fully on the wired.
Yeah.
She takes it to the club and shows it to the 8-year-old Taro?
Yeah, Taro.
Taro. She shows it to Taro and Taro's like, whoa, I want one.
Yeah, you got a psych processor, and the friends are like, I'll buy it from you, Baka, you can't afford that.
Yeah. It's funny how this show has because between the two, there's Taro and there's Arasu. And it does that thing where it just gives them two other friends, so they've got someone to sort of talk to and exposit information. But the other two friends really don't matter. They're just there to give the main person we actually care about something to say, which is
and to make them seem more like a real person, because it's the kind of show where it has to be like, okay, this person probably isn't a fake cyber hallucination. Don't worry, they do have other friends.
Yeah, and it does generally work. It does actually work to make Lane appear more lonely too. And basically Lane, her new computer turns up that her dad ordered, and the delivery man, who looks a lot like the long-haired dude from Evangelion, the tech. He got the same haircut.
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that
Very
guy.
90s.
Extremely. He drops it off and just says, "No, this machine's amazing. It's top of the line, real expensive. I don't know how you got this."
And she's like, "Okay."
Yeah, and the computer is made by, what's the name of the company?
Oh, Tachibana.
Yeah, which is Mandarin Orange, which is another Apple computer reference.
Yeah, I didn't know that until you looked that up.
The OS it runs is Copland, which it was the code name for Apple's OS project where they tried to build an OS after System 7.6 because the code base was getting old and that didn't work out. Again, this is a really this is such a deep cut. It's just these nerds. I love them. That said, I went and looked up all of the Apple references it makes. And there's stuff that I didn't get, or didn't pick up on. There's this other person does have a computer that looks like one of the 90s iMacs. There's also little things in one really sort of subliminal image sort of section where you see these different things flashing up. You see the words "think different," which was Apple's.
They actually say it out loud. I noticed that when I was rewatching it because I was looking for it, and they're like, "think different." But
it's said by the whisper voice. This is the other thing. Each episode has a title, and the title is read aloud by this whisper voice, which I'll play now.
Layer 03.
That is an old voice pack, an Apple voice pack that you can say whatever you want it to say.
Please rate and review Anime Slushy on iTunes.
Yeah, it's I forget that we had that kind of technology at that time.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty good at pronunciation, it seems like.
There's even little things there was a PS1 video game that was made, and the slogan was "Close the world, open the next," which is lowercase n, uppercase e, lowercase x, lowercase t. The company that Steve Jobs went and founded after he was kicked out of Apple was a company called Next, which was uppercase T, lowercase e, uppercase x, uppercase t. So, it's shit like that. There's just so many weird little references.
Fucking nerds.
They're just huge fucking nerds. Anyway, but I love them.
Yeah, by the way, the PS1 game, I know a little bit about it, not a lot. Apparently it explains some of the stuff in the show, but it's also clearly not exactly the same universe as the show. So in analyzing the show, I decided it doesn't count. Don't at me, bro. I'll read all the text from it someday.
There's a 20-minute compilation of all the actual the scenes you can watch from it. But the makeup of the game is that you just I can't.
I mean, it seems like a visual novel, except it's just a bunch of files for you to read.
Yeah, the game is you navigate a file system and you can read the files.
These guys are weirdos.
You're not given them in order, so you kind of have to read the whole thing and then put the story together for yourself. So it's also obtuse and is a file system simulator. So have fun with that.
I mean, that's definitely the correct kind of game for them to make for this. It's not even a game. It's what did they call it? Like a psycho file experience or something.
It's it's not a game. It's psycho stretchware.
These motherfuckers.
Yeah. As with the anime, the creative team's main goal was to let the player feel Lane, to understand her problems, and to love her. Just you fucking
That's all
weirdos.
love Lane.
You fucking dorks. Anyway,
Oh, at the end of episode 3, see, an important thing is, so she gets the thing from Taro, and then you see the sister going home, and she notices the spies and actually thinks they're weird, and she tries to talk to the mom and dad about them, and the mom and dad are like, oh, whatever. So it's almost like the sister was supposed to be a part of this system with the mom and the dad, but like either she's a real person who didn't know what was going on, or she was a program who was like broken to be too much like a normal person.
yeah, it's like she's like them, but she wasn't let in on the fact that she is not human. So
Yeah, so she's like constantly going off message and acting too much like a regular person would respond to all these things.
which I guess was maybe meant to make the simulation for Lane more real, maybe.
Yeah.
It's cruel.
Assuming that
either way.
she's fake. Yeah,
Yeah.
poor girl.
Anyway, so yeah, Lane takes the psych chip, pulls the brand new computer apart, and inserts it, so she can start like using it to sort of explore the wired better. But there's a weird moment where her sister comes in, and Lane is behaving like Lane normally does, where she's sort of short answers, not really paying attention. But she suddenly looks up and really cheerily says hello to her sister, the big smile on her face.
And it's slightly pixelated.
Yeah.
So it's like...
And it's funny because like we've been like with Lane for like a couple episodes now. It is weirdly creepy to see her act like a normal person.
Get to just be like, hello, Ne-chan. Dun dun, end of episode.
Yeah. The majority of that episode was actually about this online game, sort of maze shooter Doom type thing.
That's the next episode. That's religion.
Is it?
Layer 5.
Oh.
Religion.
Layer 5. Religion.
Layer 5.
Okay, my bad. I'm a bit thrown off by which episode is which.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of weird ass stuff that happens. But episode 4, it's interesting because at the start, Lane already has more computer, and it becomes this thing where it's like, there's no way she's ordering all these parts. This computer is just growing.
Yeah, things just keep becoming attached to it, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's strange.
Yeah, I like it though. I like that it's very clearly like, that's not normal.
But no one says anything, and no one, and even the family, like the sister doesn't really acknowledge it. The dad seems to be aware it's happening, but is concerned, but never says, "Hey, have you been using my credit card to order more computer or something?"
Yeah, he's probably just like, this is all happening finally.
Yeah. So, okay, so yes, you're right. Yeah, the next episode, there's more students killing themselves.
Yeah,
and you see you see it in the opening. There's a kid who's like he's running around in the real world, but when you see his vision, he's running around in a Wolfenstein 3D type maze.
Yeah, super future games.
Yeah, being chased by something. Actually, you know what it really looks like? It looks like that Windows 95 screensaver that generated a maze.
Yes.
With the really flat brick walls and everything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what he's running around in.
Yeah, that's exactly the aesthetic for you fellow old people. So it's like first person, like shitty looking dungeon crawler Doom thing, but there's a little girl chasing him like a proper Japanese horror. And she comes up to him and she goes, "Gotcha."
And then he slips and falls off the building that he's run onto the roof of. And yeah. And so what it turns out is that Lane investigates essentially, which for a bit was what I thought the show was going to be. Like Lane becomes like this online vigilante or something. Where she,
I mean, I'd be down for, like a little sub show of that, Lane, internet detective.
Yeah, running around figuring out what's going on. Something weird's happening. What it actually turns out is happening is that the Knights hooked together 2 games, one of which was this online action game, and the other one was a tag game for preschoolers. So these little kids are running around in like what looks like a game for preschool kids, like chasing these things and tagging them, so now they're it. But what I don't realize is that they're manifesting in the action game as this super scary, like, little kid monster, terrifying these other kids who are unable to escape from the wired and making them run off things and killing them, essentially. So that actually was a cool idea. I liked that.
Though there's that whole weird part where the kid is like shooting that girl and then it makes it look like he actually did kill a little girl because there's like something under a sheet but you can't see it. So it's like leaving it ambiguous whether that... It doesn't really make sense for that to have happened.
No, because he's not using like an actual physical gun. He's using like a gun in the game. So
Oh yeah, I like that because you see him and you don't actually see the gun at all. You just see him hold it with hold his hands like he's holding a gun, and it goes like pew pew pew.
And you see him like doing like the physical actions of like loading it and stuff, doesn't he? I feel like he does maybe.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I just remember him doing the gun hand pose.
Yeah. That was cool. The only other thing that happens.
But yeah, that's the basic thrust of that episode.
Yeah, the only other thing that happens is that later that night, after she's figured that all out and solved it, she sees the men in black just like standing outside the house, staring at her window.
Oh wait, first you got to cover her because you have to have the dad conversation where he's like, "Don't confuse the wired and the real world, Lane. It's importance. Like the distinction is important."
That's right.
And then she's like, "I don't think that's right, Dad. I don't think the line is that clear between the two." And so then when the two men in black are spying into her room,
And we say spying.
what
They're
do
they're just kind of staring through. They're out in the street staring up at her window. And she,
yeah, and they have these like red dots, almost like sniper gun sights that like are just like bouncing around her room, just being like super dicks about it.
yeah, like that's how she knows they're looking at her. That's how she knows that they're looking at him. So looking at her. So she opens the window and yells at them to go away. And as she does that, there's this pulse from all the computers in her room that shoots out to the men, and like one of their cool cyber goggles just busts. Like it breaks. So she, with the power of her mind, she just broke something in the real world.
Yeah.
That's weird.
So it's like, oh, the line is starting to blur.
And those two run off scared. They just get in the car and speed away.
Yeah, they finally have a reaction because they're like, oh, fuck.
This is
Now
weird.
she's doing shit.
Yeah. Episode 6, Kids.
What? You skipped episode 5.
That was episode 5. Oh, no, it isn't. You're
That
right.
was episode 4.
Sorry. Well, time is becoming unstuck.
Oh no, episode 5. Well, that's appropriate because episode 5 is layer 5 distortion.
Oh, yeah. This is maybe the most genuinely creepy episode of the whole show.
Yes. This is the one that really stuck with me when I was a preteen.
So this is an episode essentially about her sister.
Yeah.
So the episode ends with the knights have. It turns out all the cars in Tokyo these days are controlled by like a computer system because they're all automated, and sort of
they all
drive
have
themselves.
auto-drive.
Yeah, and the knights have fucked with the auto drive system and are making cars crash and like run onto the pavement and stuff. And she sees someone being hit by a car and just sort of thinks that's weird and walks off. Meanwhile, Lane is sort of having these hallucinatory experiences where she's just sort of sitting in a room and she has these conversations with a doll and then like a teddy bear and then a dad and then a mum and then a dad. And it's not them. She's just sort of having these conversations by herself.
Yeah, I think those are representative of conversations she's having in like the Wired VR or whatnot. But the way that they choose to present it is, of course, super creepy because everything in the show is super creepy. So she's just like sitting in her room looking at this like floating mom, and she's like, "Are you my mom?" And then she just like starts spouting random shit.
Yeah, like because it's confusing because Lane is talking to them trying to figure out if they are actually the thing that she's seeing, but they're giving her information that it seems like it's something she would have been investigating or something. It's very
Yeah, because at first she's talking to the doll about like she asks the doll to tell her something she doesn't know, and the doll's like, "There's nothing that you don't know." But then she starts talking to her about the nature of prophecies and the power of a prophecy to like make something happen. And that's the power that the knights have over the real world at the moment, is that they can basically manipulate information to cause things to happen in the real world.
Like the idea being that like the prophecy is prophesizing something is the thing that makes it real. Kind of. Yeah.
Because a lot of this episode is about them fucking with the sister to drive her crazy.
Yeah.
But unless you go back and understand that they're involved with this, it just seems like she's going crazy for no reason, or that the world is fucking with her.
Yeah. So she sort of becomes unstuck from reality essentially. Like she's walking down the street again and she sees Lane just sitting on the road in the middle of traffic, sort of mumbling to herself. And then
Wait, okay, but no, the order of events here is very important.
Okay, you go.
Because this is something I didn't understand, and once I did, I was like, God, this fucking show. So do you remember the guy handing her the tissue pack?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so a guy hands her a tissue pack, and then Taro shows up and like hits on her, and then oops, he spills his coffee on her to make her use the tissue. And then the tissue says the other side is overcrowded, the dead will have nowhere to go, which is a very nice, creepy phrase. But that's so those guys were both in on it, and they put that message there for her to start driving her crazy.
Okay.
And then she sees Lane on the crosswalk, but I think the Lane on the crosswalk was Lane projecting herself there because that's when she was investigating the accidents.
Okay.
So I don't think that's her going crazy. I think that's her starting to be more tied in with the digital world. And so she sees Lane, who's looking into that there.
Doesn't she also then see herself in the middle of the crossing?
Later, she has a hallucination where she's in the middle of the crossing and there's a bunch of ghosts around.
Okay.
Because I think this episode is her simultaneously going crazy, but as she loses her touch on reality, she like becomes more digitized, more or less.
It sort of seems like it's her becoming a digital ghost.
Yes.
Which might be the result of what happens to her in the real world. Because we see her talking to her parents saying that Elaine is acting weird and sort of like, not kicking up a fuss, but just kind of starting to notice that things aren't right. Like we see a bit of her looking into Lane's room and thinking that's weird, like all the computers and shit.
Yeah, and she asks Lane about the crossing thing, and of course Lane doesn't know anything about it. First, she sees that vision of her on the crosswalk, and it's before because she looks up and she sees the Knights logo, and she's flipping out. And then she suddenly wakes up and she's in the restaurant, and she's like, "What? This is when I would normally be having dinner with my parents. Where am I?" And then like no one's there. And she spills her drink, and the drink forms the words "fulfill the prophecy." And she's freaking the fuck out. And she goes into the bathroom, and it's all weird. She hears a door opening. She goes into the stall. She looks at the door of the stall. It just says "fulfill the prophecy" like over and over and over. It's so creepy.
And the lights go out, and she's running around outside, and everything's dark, and everything's weird. And she gets home, and then she sees herself just walking down the corridor in the house. Yeah,
so she gets home, she's freaking out, and she sees just like a normal looking version of her just walking, and she freaks out. And then Lane comes in and talks to her, the normal looking sister, who's just like whatever. But then Lane looks over to where the one that we've been following is, and it's like this ghost screaming, this like digital ghost
that just fades and it fades away.
Yeah.
Now what I assumed happened based on things I saw later was that because this sister was asking questions and potentially could mess things up, they essentially deleted her?
Yeah, I thought that might be the case too. They like overwrote her with a, like more convenient version of her.
Yeah, and what we saw happening, because we were following her around, was the experience of dying as a computer program.
It's very possible.
The thing is, if this was the Knights, this was definitely the Knights were sort of messing with her, but...
Yeah, they were definitely involved.
Yeah, and maybe it was like the Knights tried to drive her crazy so she would go and talk to Lane, but before she could do that, the other force involved deleted her. Maybe?
Possible.
Yeah.
I think they just the Knights want to break down all the like structures around Lane that keep her tied to the real world. So if her sister gets all fucked up, that's like one more thing that might drive Lane over the edge.
Yeah, but it did seem like her sister was starting to help detach Lane on her own, like because she was aware that things were strange and was sort of bringing it up to Lane. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like, I guess there's like two things. There's Lane understanding that everything around her isn't normal, and there's Lane wanting to leave the real world because everything's all fucked up. And they need the latter. So as long as she has other people with her who can be like, yeah, this is fucked up, but we'll figure it out together, that's unacceptable.
Yeah, yeah. And this new version of her sister that is here now is basically broken. Like...
Yeah, most of the times we see her from now on, she's all like, beep, beep.
She just sort of beeps to herself and doesn't really function like a human anymore. And her parents, like, before we know what's going on, her parents, like, she's just sitting in a room going beep, beep, beep. Her parents don't care.
Yeah, like, at one point, the mom is like, oh, you keep coming home early lately. You used to be Lane that came home early, but now Lane's staying out late. And it shows the sister just like, boo.
Yeah, it's like there's nothing there anymore. It's just like some sort of base system or something. So, yeah.
Poor sister.
That's essentially an episode where you saw the sister die. But in a digital way.
Oh, God. again, as a teen watching that, it's scary.
It's very creepy and very sort of upsetting because it was just like again, it's this thing of like if the parents are some sort of sentient being, they at least know what the deal is and what's going on. She seems to be the same thing, but no one ever clued her in, so she has no idea what's happening. And it's just upsetting.
It's just like knowing she's having this whole experience and no one will understand it because, like Lane is the only one who saw anything and it was just like that tiny ghost after image.
There's an episode of Voyager that's like that, but the Voyager one is much stupider and more of a kick in the dick.
Oh, God. The one where they try to send the final message.
Yeah.
It's all because they were disintegrating. That episode worked on me, though.
I hated that episode so much. I thought that was so stupid.
If I rewatched it now, it might not work on me, but I know.
It was just that the setup in that episode was really absurd. But anyway, doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's not Voyager slushy.
No, this is a much better. We should do that. This is a much better version. It's just it's sad and upsetting, and no one will ever know that happened to her because she's dead before she can tell anyone. And
Bummer.
Yeah. So anyway, the next episode is where
Kids Layer 6.
This is where Arasu starts to get more involved, I think, to some extent. She's really involved in the next episode, but like in this episode we start to see her sort of she's actually in the show more, I guess. She's a bit more present.
Yeah, because there's a couple times in this episode and the previous ones where she'll like comment on like, "Oh, Lane, you're hanging out with us more now," or "Oh, Lane, you've gone back to being more reticent." But from Lane's perspective, it's like, "Oh no, I'm hanging out with all my internet friends now." So you can tell that she's like actively concerned about Lane a lot of the time and trying to do right by her.
Yeah. So this episode, kids, I feel like I just forgot all of this. Can you explain this episode to me? The guy storing children's energy or something?
So what's important at first is that Lane is out with her friends, with Alice and the other two girls, and she sees some kids raising their arms to the sky. And she's like, "What's up with that?" She looks up and there's a giant naked god Lane, but it's like very blurry and like there's no details or anything. So it's just like this heavenly image of Lane that's been projected. And she's like, "That's fucking weird." So she goes to the Wired to investigate it. You see her like walking through a void in the Wired and there's that big floating mouth guy who's like, I guess just some random internet nerd that wants to be helpful to the cool, famous Lane. But because he can only project himself as a mouth, he's just like, I can help you. Oh, I have some information for you. And she's like, "You're stupid. I don't need this." And he's like, "Okay, I definitely helped though. Tell everyone I helped you." So she finds out about this professor who basically, I feel like this episode is mostly to establish that psychic power kind of is a thing in this universe, because he did an experiment to link up a bunch of kids, because he said that like kids have very slight ESP and it's like maybe if you honed it as best you could bend a coin. So they thought that they could get a bunch of kids together with like, stuff hooked up to their brains and maybe create some kind of proper psychic force out of it. But it was way too crazy and all of the kids died. And there was like some kind of like psychic explosion thing. But that's why the kids were raising their arms before Lane was actually visible to everyone else at the beginning, because young people are more like tied into the psychic neural network thing.
Right.
So she's talking to this professor in the digital realm about all this stuff that he did, but he's old and in a hospital in real life. And so once he's done describing his crimes basically to her, he dies and his little digital world fades out. But he says that someone on the internet must have found some remnants of his experiment because they've incorporated it into whatever they're doing. And she realizes that it must be the Knights. And she goes to confront them about like, "Did you do that weird big psychic image of me to everybody? What the fuck?" But they aren't responding to her now.
Right.
And that's the most of what happens this episode. Oh, and the agents come back, and she's like, "Are you the Knights?" And they're like, "Nah." and we're that not us.
And that's when the coolant in her room bursts as well, isn't it?
Yeah. The something in their computer overheats, and they say that it's because of a virus planted by the Knights. And they're like, by the way, not us. Totally, we're not the Knights. Other guys.
Yeah, different guys.
And so the episode ends with the sirens being like, meow, meow. So does that answer your questions?
Yes. I'll be honest. I think I must have missed this episode.
You didn't see it?
I think I might have just accidentally skipped it.
Oh no,
well.
You didn't see her talking to this old man about his crimes?
I guess not. I feel like it doesn't really add anything to this. I don't feel like I understood less.
Well, it's basically because at this point they haven't introduced the idea of like the collective unconscious or psychicness or anything yet. So it's kind of to like get those ideas rolling. It's also to talk about like the Knights as this group that acts like they're Lane's friends but aren't. Because earlier in the episode you see her talking to a bunch of people who are acting like her friends online, and then you realize it's the Knights, but they kind of like just want to manipulate her.
Right, okay.
And so you get to see Lane be a little cyber detective for a while again.
It is interesting the way that, like, in order to get to the eventual conclusion, each episode does kind of introduce you to at least one idea.
Yeah.
That helps to sort of make the ending make sense.
Yeah.
Or at least what is happening overall. But it's like it'll take a whole episode just to sort of do that one thing.
Yeah.
Without really moving the plot. There isn't, like, the plot, it is very slow. The plot doesn't move at a rapid pace. There's like one or two major beats each episode, and that's about it.
Yeah, the show in general is very like deliberately paced and more like heady and just like about mood.
So the next episode, this is the one where Arisu starts to tell Lane that she's worried that she's sort of slipping back into herself.
Yeah.
Like you see her in school and she's just on like a little handheld phone thing. There's these reports that the Knights have like cracked into the control center for the Wired.
Yeah, I don't know what that was all about. I guess
Yeah. Is this the one where they kill that guy who's wandering around outside with a bunch of computers?
Yeah, the homeless AR man.
Yeah. There's this dude who's just like got a whole bunch of computers in a backpack and some VR goggles on, who's just walking around trying to become a member of the Knights, like he's talking to them.
Yeah.
But he's also like just talking out loud, and everyone's just sort of staring and going, what the fuck is this guy's doing?
Yeah, because this episode, it kind of has like an A plot and a B plot, because you follow Lane, but then meanwhile, kind of disconnected from that, you actually see some of the members of Knights and what they're like at home. There's like a businessman, and there's like this stay-at-home, work-from-home mom.
Yeah.
And they all have their own lives going on.
She's got the iMac.
Oh, she's the one with it?
Yeah. There's also the more typical computer internet nerd who's just a fat dude like lying in a mess in a tiny apartment.
Yeah.
On the computer in the dark. Basically, the Men in Black turn up and ask Lane to go with them, and she meets
Mr. Tachibana man.
Yeah, someone from Tachibana, who basically tells her that the Lane you think is someone else is actually also you. And this really freaks Lane out.
He's basically just asking a bunch of questions. He's like, are you the Lane in the Wired? Is your family your real family? And Lane is freaking out until she starts to enter Wired Lane mode. Like, she gets all confident all of a sudden and stuff.
And sort of tells him to piss off and goes to leave.
Yeah, but he's like, if you're here, Wired Lane, that means that the barrier is weakening between the real world and the Wired.
Yeah, I think that's what they were suggesting was starting to happen with the Knights taking control of the Wired or cracking into that control center. Is it that this is the point where the barrier starts to break down? Yeah, and like she's leaving, and like one of the Knights tries to sort of stop her, and she's like, are you going to hurt me? And he's like, no, you're the dangerous one.
Yeah. I like the tall agent man.
Yeah, he seems nice. He's weirdly protective of her, despite also being like just hanging out outside her house and shit.
Yeah. But then like the little one is just like, or the short guy seems just like a little shit. He's always like laughing or whatever.
Yeah, he's more of
I don't know. I like those two guys. They're those two guys.
Yeah.
The character trope.
He's kind of a prick. But yeah, these two guys are working for this guy who's from Tachibana.
Yeah.
So it kind of seems like these are the two forces that are working on Lane, where there's the Knights who want Lane to become an internet god, and there's Tachibana who seem concerned with trying to keep the real world and the Wired separate.
Yeah, so they seem to be at odds, but it turns out later that Tachibana does actually also want her to enter the Wired. They just don't want the Knights to have control of her.
Yeah. I almost got the impression that they just want her to go back there. They don't like the fact that she's in the real world right now.
Oh, that's possible. Yeah.
Like this is her being here at all is a development that is worrying, and they're like, can you fuck off back where you belong, please?
Go back to your super Earth computer or whatever the fuck.
Yeah. The next episode, Rumors, is where we first meet Evil Lane or Troll Lane.
Oh yeah, and we also learn about 80 a bit because they talk about the 7th generation protocol for the first time.
Yes, yeah. So the idea is that, and again, this is based on a real thing. The internet, I don't know if it still is, if this has been implemented yet or not, but I'm pretty sure it has. The internet was running out of IP addresses. So, you know the way that every, like...
I don't know about any of all this. Tell me about this.
Okay, so IP addresses.
Yeah.
Any website you look at, like wikipedia.org, the address on the internet isn't actually wikipedia.org. It's a series of 4 numbers.
Oh, it's only 4 numbers?
No. It's a series of 4 numbers that all run from 0 to 999.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so...
But it's running out?
Yeah. This is the thing. The explosion on the internet meant that, like, when they first set it up, they were like, "Oh, we'll never use up all these numbers." And of course, you know, they're being used up. So they had to introduce a new version of the Internet Connection Protocol, which used more numbers to create web addresses, essentially. So that whole thing about upgrading from Protocol 6 to Protocol 7 is kind of based on a real thing that was happening at the time.
I see.
Yeah.
And by now in the real world, it's totally not a thing.
I think it's been fixed since then.
Yeah,
So,
in the past 20 years.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the original one was Internet Protocol version 4.
I see.
The one that's currently in use now is Internet Protocol version 6.
I see.
That was the big upgrade.
The next one, we're ready.
Yeah, IVP6 was around as a concept in 1999. So in this near future, they're done with IP6 and they want to move on to Internet Protocol version 7, which this Airy guy is working on. He's like a member of the team, essentially, who are designing this.
But by the point of the show, he's already dead.
Oh yeah, he's already dead, but he was on the team?
Yeah, he was like in charge of it.
He worked at Tachibana, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But we'll learn more about it in the next episode. The main thing that happens in this episode is we find Lane is concerned that there's all these rumors floating around that she told everyone something really secret about Arisu.
Yeah, like she goes there and Aris is like, I'm sure it's fine. I don't believe it was you. And she's like, what? What are you talking about?
And no one will tell her what it is that has been said.
Yeah.
It's quite frustrating to watch for quite a while because it's like everyone's saying Lane did a bad thing and Arisu is saying, I'm sure it wasn't you. And no one will actually just tell Lane what it was that happened.
Yeah, that gives you like a kind of visceral, like almost like a more relatable feeling, you know, even though it's such like a weird specific thing that's happening.
Yeah. No, you can definitely relate to it. It's that feeling of what someone fucking tell me. By the way, this is the basis for Evangelion Rebuild 3.0, which makes it such a fucking incredibly frustrating movie.
Wait, what? Is
that feeling of something has happened and no one will tell you what it is.
Oh.
That's kind of the experience of the whole movie.
Shit, I gotta watch that.
Yeah, you do. Only because it's awful. But yeah, what it turns out is that Arisu is in love with her teacher and like really into him. This is one of the creepier aspects of Lane that I don't think was meant to be as creepy as it is.
Nah.
Like, they didn't seem to think this was creepy, and I'm sure that.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like she was actually in a relationship with her teacher, right?
I don't think so. Because I'm certain that the rumor that's going around is that she's into him and has sexual fantasies about him. And then later on, there's like when she's older, there's a thing.
No, because there's as nice as that would be, they specifically say once Lane makes them forget that it was her, they say that the rumor is that he's seeing an 8th grader. And there's also the part where her friend is talking to her over the internet and she's like, look, we need to get you dating another boy so that everybody knows that rumor is not true. And then Arisu says something to herself to the effect of like, but it is true.
I thought it was just a sexual fantasy thing because you do see her masturbating, sort of like, not explicit or anything. Implied,
yeah. No, yeah, I thought that from this episode, but from later episodes, I do think that they were like having a tryst or something. Unfortunately, yes.
I don't know. I need to rewatch it, but fuck, that sucks.
Yeah.
But basically,
either way,
the thing is that Lane, the Lane is spread this rumor. And obviously our Lane doesn't remember this or think it happened, but she meets this troll version of herself. That is a separate again from the the confident version of herself.
Yeah, because at first you see Arisu in her room, and that's when you see her, like, and at first it seems like she's with the teacher, but then you see that it's just her fantasizing about that. And then it shows her bed, and evil troll Lane is on the bed, like, laughing, like, is she your dear teacher? Meh, I'm going to tell everybody. So Lane has somehow seen a vision of all this. She's seen this going down because you see her back at her home, and she's all freaked out about it. And she's like, oh my God, what's happening?
And she's sort of insisting that wasn't me. I didn't do this. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. But at this point, she's already been told that these online versions of herself are still her. So, yeah, she's just majorly disturbed by this whole thing, which, fair.
Yeah, and so she's like goes to this realm where she's confronting her evil self, and she's like choking it, and the evil self's like, oh, look at me, I'm committing suicide.
Yeah, because like while she's choking herself, you start seeing these big like sort of flashes on screen, like she's blacking out.
Yeah.
So it is kind of implying that, yeah, this is still you. This is the point where I was thinking, because you brought this up, this was someone's theory about the different versions of Lane being the ego and the superego.
Yes.
Which I went and looked into it more. I mean, I don't. There's nothing to say this is definitely like what it is, but like
it lines up pretty well, though.
It does, because there's this troll evil version of Lane that kind of just does whatever they want, which is sort of the id. In terms of the theory of the id, the ego, and the superego, there's actually two parts to the superego.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, there's the conscience and the ideal self, which sort of work a little bit separately. The way I was sort of thinking of it was like this id is evil Lane. The in real life version of Lane we're seeing is the conscience, and the confident Lane is the idealized version of herself.
Wait, then who's the ego?
The ego is what she eventually becomes.
I see.
Because the ego is also, I think, the last part of that grouping to develop.
I see. Yeah, I'm not a super expert on that, but the last episode is called Ego.
Neither am I, but there is this sort of thing where like the tension between those two different lanes, because the superego is made up of exterior sort of pressures on you, like the ways you think you should behave based on the way you've been socialized.
Yeah.
And then the ego ends up being this sort of like a compromise between the id and the super. So
I see.
And so in terms of like if Lane is this collective unconscious or the earth or whatever becoming conscious, the development of these separate things sort of happens in the right order.
Oh, yeah.
It is kind of like those parts of the mind interacting with each other and eventually forming the ego.
I see.
Based on the tensions and the actions of the other two things.
Yeah. Oh, something I wanted to say about the three different lanes that I like a lot.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
I was telling you about this. In the production notes, they have like style guides for how to draw the three different lanes. And the real world lane is written in kanji for Iwakura Lane, her whole name. The confident online lane is written in hiragana, the like more alphabetical Japanese characters. And the troll lane is written lane in like Romanji and like English characters, Lain. Which I like because it's like... What are you using, the evil English lane?
I mean, it was also used in the scripts, I believe, as a way to differentiate them when they were writing.
Yeah.
Like when they would refer to the different lanes within the script. But it is, yeah, funny that the shittiest evil lane is the one that we write in English.
Yeah, but the way I think about it is that like her most human, like the one that has like a full kanji name is the, like the one that we know, and then it's increasing levels of like simplification and abstraction to, like what you would type in for code or whatnot. Yeah,
because all computer code is done in Romanji. So it is like the id lane, the evil lane is the base lane.
Yeah.
But it also kind of works because the kanji lane is also like is the most complicated and sort of the best presented, which is also what the superego is.
Aha.
They are the societal expectation, the way you are expected to behave, these sort of things.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's one of those things where this feels like right at the end of the episode, basically what Lane does to try and fix this situation is she kind of realizes she can mess with people's memories.
Yes.
So she erases the rumor ever existing out of everyone's memories, whoever came into contact with it. And so she goes to school the next day and Arisu's happy to see her and everyone's cheery and it's fine. But as she goes to talk to her, you see this other version of Lane sort of leap out of her that then goes and walks away with Arisu. And Lane's like, but wait, no, that's me. What's going on?
Okay, so I believe this is just like a vision because she spends the next few episodes working on the way to actually delete everyone's memory to help Alice like that.
Oh.
So I don't think she's actually done it yet at this point. I think that's just her like trying to come to terms with the idea of the implications of doing something like that.
Yeah, because I thought that part of that was that she felt there was an element of, even if I do this and even if I can completely undo what I did, I still feel like a fake because I know that I did it, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
the version of herself that she sees leaping out and acting normally with Arasu is like, it's a front.
Yeah, I do think that's like the idea that's being explored.
Yeah, because that is there's something the show sort of talks about a lot, is that, you know, the idea of the version of the self you project onto the internet versus what you're actually like is sort of a thing it talks about a lot. And so I felt like that was like another aspect of it, is that like, is that version actually you, or is it a false image as well? And like, if you do a shitty thing, like, does that create the false version of yourself because you have to pretend that it didn't happen? Like, yeah, this is a very thoughtful show.
Like, there's also various times now like since the last few episodes where the god of the internet, 80, starts like talking to her, and he says that he's like, that Lane's also you, like, you know, you're many places on the internet, and I started to it made me very like contemplative about the idea of, like, you know, if you have a presence online, as I do. Obviously everyone has like this different idea of what your deal is. You know, like there's like all these versions of you that exist in everyone's minds.
Yeah,
and that's something that she brings up later too in a different context. But so it's like the people that hate you, the idea that they have of you, like, you can't say that it's not you. Like, it's definitely not someone else, but it's also not a you that you can, you know, like, relate to.
It's also not a you that you can control, which is part of what Lane experiences in that moment, is that the Lane she would be creating in Arasu's mind is not her in a way.
Yeah.
It is her, but it's also not a version she gets to fully experience because she kind of knows the truth, like, about what happened. And also because you just can't. You can't experience the experience of being the person that someone thinks you are, in a way.
Right.
Again, this is, I don't think anyone who's actually sat down and really thought about this show can ever say that it is just a lolta random, like, you know, weird show. It's very, very thoughtful in terms of the ideas of like online personas and the self and what that is. Which is also what, to me, lends credence to the idea that the whole show is about a sentient being coming to experience itself for the first time, because these are the things that she's having to encounter for the first time. The concept of the self and what the hell am I?
Yeah. And the episode ends with that really sad, like, she's touching her computer screen and she's like, Navi, because that's what they call the computers in the show. And she's like, there's no other me but me, right? And it's all sad. And it's like, end of episode.
It is. That's the end.
Oh, baby.
Yeah.
And then the next episode starts talking with fucking Area 51.
Yeah, this is the where we get the whole conspiracy montage, and then while they talk about the Schumann resonances, they also talk about Protocol 7 and why people think there is this god on the internet, and the god is Eri, this guy called Eri, Masami Eri, I think.
Oh yeah, this is the first time they name him,
Yeah. So he was the guy in charge of, he was either working on or in charge of the Protocol 7 team. But he had this theory based on the Schumann resonances that he could kind of program himself. If he sort of inserted his own consciousness into the code for Protocol 7, he would essentially be a god on the internet who existed at its base level and can control it. And people think that he did it because Tachibana caught him doing something and fired him, and he then committed suicide.
Yeah, he killed himself in front of a train. But I think, like, you know, but it wasn't that because he was fired. It was because he was like, well, it's time for me to go be a person on the internet.
Yeah.
I've already done it. I'm going to go be God.
Yeah. And now he's God.
But meanwhile, while all that stuff is going on, we're seeing Lane, and she's... Oh, there's that, like, vision she sees of an alien peeking into her room when they're talking about the Area 51 thing.
Yeah, so this is maybe one of the parts where it's like, okay, this is a bit random.
That's a little random.
I don't think this meant anything in particular. I think this was just a weird image. But
then it shows her peeking into Alice's room, and then she's the alien, and then it's relevant by that point.
Yeah, and she's sort of... That's the next episode, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. Anyway, she goes to the club, and the DJ there, who she's talked to before, who she seems to know, has something for her. Like a chip that she dropped?
Yeah, he says that she left it there, but obviously she doesn't remember leaving it there. She goes over to Taro and she says, hey, last time we talked, he had actually said that he wanted to go on a date with Lane. And they don't seem to remember that. They legitimately don't seem to remember him wanting to go on a date with her.
Did they? I thought he did because he said he didn't want to date this version of her. He wanted to date the online version of her.
Oh yeah, he was like, even if I did, it wouldn't be this one. But
Yeah.
but the other two seem genuinely confused. But I don't know. Maybe they're just being stupid kids.
They might have just been confused that Lane wants to date this 8-year-old.
Look, I don't think he's that much younger than her.
He's a lot shorter. They're all a lot shorter. They look like
Yeah,
first.
I guess he's
whatever.
probably like 11 or something.
Like I would say primary school, but that's not a thing that you'll be able to relate to.
Yeah, he's probably like a 6th grader. So she's like, "Okay, Taro, you want to do that date? Come to my house." And then he's like, "Okay." But then once he's at her house, he's like looking at all her computers, and by this point her room is full of like, there's just like coolant fluid everywhere, and it's all crazy, and there's this computer shit all over the place. It looks all nuts.
When you step on the floor, it squidges because
Yeah.
of that coolant burst earlier.
And so she sits him down at the computer and she puts the chip on there and she's like, "You know what this is, aren't you? You're with knights, and what would this have done to me?" Oh, because she accuses him of being knights because she says the only place that people have seen the other Lane in the real world is in Siberia. And so what she's figured out is that he's been rewriting people's memories that go to that club to think that they've seen Lane.
Ah.
So nobody actually like physically saw Cyber
Lane.
Lane there.
Yeah. No one ever saw Cool Lane.
Yeah.
They just thought they did. Which includes the guy who killed himself. He never actually met her either.
Yeah. He was extra susceptible to that rewriting because of the cyber drugs.
But and also that also explains why he thought that Lane was trying to make him do whatever it is he wanted to do.
Yes.
Because the instructions he was actually getting were from the Knights in the guise of Lane.
See, yeah. I do still think it's possible that she influenced him to kill himself in that moment, but it's hard to say.
I think he did too, because what she said to him seemed very odd for regular Lane to say. Like that was out of character for her to do any of what she was doing. But yeah.
Yeah.
But
in any case,
the thing is that everyone saw her doing it, so she actually did do it because like they're talking about it at school
Yeah.
next day. Oh no, it's weird. Anyway, any case, the chip that she has when she asks Taro what it does, he admits that it's like it's a code that's made to disrupt human memory.
Yeah, he said it's like it's non-volatile memory. It will override existing memories.
Yeah, and it was made by the Knights. It's from the Knights. Like he says that he's not a full member of them. He just thinks they're cool and they give him jobs sometimes.
Yeah. He's too baby to be a proper member. And he said that the Knights want to make the one truth the one and only truth or something like that. Which I think is like they want to make Lane the god that they claim she is, basically.
And they also want to make the one layer of existence. Like
Yeah.
merge the wired and the real world, and there's just one. It's just all one thing.
Yeah, so basically if she had installed that chip, it would have like fucked up her mind and probably driven her crazy or something. But she was too on the ball and they didn't get her. And then before Taro leaves, he gives her a kiss and he's like, "I gotta do it because I'm a guy." And I thought that was cute and stupid.
I mean, it's a cute idea of what like a kid that young thinks. I'm gonna be a man.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a big cool guy.
Yeah, but he's a fucking baby.
Yeah.
And Lane's just confused.
Yeah, she's like, "What a dork." I was just trying to be all cool, do like spy shit with you. This is dumb.
So anyway, the next episode, at the start of the next episode, Eri finally introduces himself to Lane.
Yeah, or he actually shows up at the end of the episode and there's like a really long, like zooming over a single image shot of him, and it's kind of funny. Because Eri has like a goofy face. He has like a kind of fish face with the dimple chin.
Yeah.
I think he looks like a doofus.
He's got bandages around his waist, one of his arms, and his legs because when he jumped in front of the train cut him up.
Yeah, but it looks kind of like electrical tape almost to me.
Yeah, like he's been sort of taped back together. But yeah, he does.
Yeah.
He does. He's the creator of Protocol 7. He's telling Lane that she doesn't need to exist in the real world anymore. When she's finished talking to him, she goes home and everyone's gone. And it looks like everyone's been gone for ages. Like all the plants in the house are dead.
Oh, but first she goes to school. And there's that like that felt like such a legit like nightmare kind of thing, because you know like she goes to school and there's no desk for her there.
Yeah, and then like the teacher's just like passing things through her, and no one is acknowledging that she exists. And she's like, "No, I'm real." She keeps insisting that she's real. She's a real person.
Yeah, she's like, "Am I really not supposed to have a body?" Because that's what he told her. And yeah, then so she goes home and no one's there and everything's all weird.
Doesn't Arisu also look up? and tell her that no, you're not real.
Arisa tells her, but it's clearly like that wasn't actually her.
No, this is some sort of thing that the knights are doing to her or something.
Yeah, she's just freaking out and imagining that.
She comes back out of this, and the house is kind of abandoned. Like all the lights are off. I think the sister is still there, but she's just kind of like slumped in a corner, beeping to herself.
Yeah, she's guying.
Oh yeah, she's putting like her hand up to her head like a phone. Just going beep.
Yeah, at one point
beep,
she starts doing that. Yeah.
Beep beep. It's very creepy. It's really creepy.
that always really stuck. I feel like the dub was actually really good for the time because there's a lot of lines that like I can still hear in my head, and one is like that whole like beep beep ga.
So yeah, she comes back into the house and she thinks it's empty, but then her dad's there, and it turns out he's come back. Kind of, he wasn't supposed to come back, but he's come back because he wants to say bye.
Yes. He says, I do want to say goodbye to you because I love you. And he's like, you can become whatever you want now. You always had that ability or whatever.
And I do love you, and I also kind of wish that I had the opportunity that you have right now, kind of.
Yeah, because she's like, please don't leave me alone. And he's like, you're never alone, Lane.
Yeah.
And she's like, it doesn't count.
Yeah, I mean, it does start to feel, this is the point where it really does start to feel like a nightmare, because Lane is still, like we said, this is all Lane coming to terms with what she is. So even at this point, Lane is still insisting that she's a real person.
Yeah.
And at this point, everyone around her is telling her that you aren't real. You're not a real thing. Your family's not real. Like, your dad's here to say goodbye and refuses to stay because you're not real. You just had a vision of the only friend you have telling you you're not real. You feel very bad for her.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
You know, scary.
Anyway, that she learns, I can't remember if her dad tells her this or she just kind of learns it, but that Eri is connected to the knights. He is essentially, the knights worship him, essentially.
Oh, no, Eri actually kind of explains it because he says that in that conversation that he has with her at the start of the episode, and it's a weird thing where, like, he's talking through her body and she's talking through his body.
Yeah, that was weird.
And it's a very strange, heady conversation, but he says that the only way that he can be a god is if there's someone to worship him, and that's the role that the knights fulfill. Mm. And so because all this shit is going down, she's very mad now. And so she finds out who the knights are, and she publishes it for everyone, and then the agents show up and kill all of them.
So again, in terms of being ahead of its time, she doxed them.
She did dox them.
She doxed them, and then the agents who are working for Teshibana turn up and kill them. Because as much as like what they want Lane to do, not exactly the same, but like roughly the same sort of thing, they definitely are working against each other. So once the agents learn who the knights are, they just go and kill them in their houses. They're dead.
Yeah, and then the agents come and see her, and by this point, Lane is like so hooked into her computer, there's just like wires all over her, and she looks kind of like half dead in her physical body. She
got like alligator clips just kind of like stuck on her lip.
Yeah.
And like one on her nose and stuff. Like it's very, and she's just sort of slumped. Like she looks, apart from anything else, she looks really depressed.
Yeah. So she's like, why did you kill them? And they're like, we need to get, they said that they want to scrub Ares' code out of Protocol 7 and, like remove him from being God of the Wired. And then the big agent, he takes off his visor thing and he's like, we still don't know what you are, but I do know I love you.
Let's all love Lane.
Yes, because there's this nature to Lane you start to realize that like makes everyone on the internet like love her. Because I guess just because she wants to be loved.
But yeah, I mean, there's that. But it's also like, I mean, even you as the viewer, you feel something for her because she's like, she just wants to exist. She just wants to.
Yeah.
And she's in this awful situation, and you really do sympathize with her because she is. The version of Lane we see is like is a real innocent.
Yeah, she baby. Oh, and we didn't talk about like sometimes she's wearing the hoodie pajamas. That's a bear, and it's so cute.
I was going to say this is the other thing about Lane is that despite being like this weird online god sentient thing, she's also pretty moe.
Oh yeah, she's very moe.
Yeah, and the cool version of her is kind of a badass, which is also cool. So she's kind of manages to be both characters at once, which is kind of cool.
She my baby.
Now, it turns out that even with the Knights dead, and Tachibana trying to scrub Eri's code away, she has this conversation with Eri where he says, like, I'm still here because you're still here. Like,
Yeah, she's like, okay, now I killed all the knights. Now who will worship you now? And he's like, well, you're still here, Lane, and you exist because of me. So like, love me, Lane, as your creator.
Yeah,
And then she's like, fucking whatever.
He claims that he created Lane, which turns out to not
Yes.
actually be quite true. Maybe.
Or he was at least like, she implies that the collective unconscious world force thing manipulated him into creating this form of her.
Yeah.
Into creating Protocol 7 and stuff.
He sort of knows roughly what she is, kind of, and he thought that he was manipulating her into breaking down the barrier between the real world and the wide. But she's actually like a bigger, older thing than he is, and it might have been her subconsciously doing that from the start. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically him trying to take credit for like these big forces that were probably at work long before he came into the picture.
Yeah, and it's I guess it's entirely possible that he did set things in motion, but then that she ended
Oh
up.
yeah, he definitely helped.
Yeah. But it turned out once she sort of became fully conscious, she is essentially like a world force god and was far more than he could actually handle. Maybe.
Yeah,
kind of.
you don't control my daughter.
Yeah. There's also this cool bit where you find out that the knights have been doxxed because Taro and his friends are hanging out of Siberia, but the version of Siberia we see now is like what looks like a long abandoned warehouse.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder, was Siberia ever there?
Yeah, it's like how much of like what Siberia looked like was just a memory edit thing.
Yeah, like when Arisu and those guys went to it, was any of it actually happening, or would they just think it was happening?
Who knows, man?
Yeah, it was the DJ real. Was he just a program?
I think the DJ's still there when they're hanging out. I want to believe DJ's real. I want to think he has his own weird life.
But it was funny because like Taro's looking on his computer, and his friends are just in the abandoned warehouse going, "Man, this place sucks now." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, it kind of looks like it does. Doesn't it? It's an abandoned warehouse."
Hey kids, maybe find a different place to hang out other than this weird abandoned drug place. I don't know, go to a fucking park. Goddamn babies.
Yeah, anyway. So
episode 11.
Yeah, we're almost there.
Infonography.
Infonography. What is...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a term? I don't know. But it starts with a kind of clip show rehashed thing.
Yeah, even Lane can't escape the need for a clip show. I like the way the Wikipedia describes the start of this episode.
Oh yeah.
After a really long and complicated memory flashback, they can't even be bothered going into it. It's very long. Look, trying to summarize this series was already hard enough. I'm not bothering. I can't be stuffed.
Yeah, because there's a lot of like glitchy stuff happening, and then it's showing you different clips from different parts of the show, and it's playing weird music over it. But stuff that it does linger on quite a bit is there's been a few times when Alice has held her hand.
Yeah.
Because there's one time when she's like really depressed and she's like on the roof, like not like she's about to jump, but I do think that's why she's on the roof thinking about it, to make you think about that.
Yeah.
And Alice is like, "Are you doing okay? I just want to know that you're doing okay." And she holds her hand, and it really like perked Lane up a lot. So it keeps like kind of focusing on that.
I keep calling her Arisu and you keep calling her Alice. Just so everyone's clear, that's the same person.
Yeah, I do think that Arisu is meant to be the Kana Alice, because she mentions that her name's weird in the last episode.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
Alice is what the dub calls her.
I'll just call her Alice then. It feels me insisting on using the Japanese one when you're probably a bigger weeb than I am. So yeah.
Yeah. How did this happen? Arisu.
It's Aerith.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be like Earth.
Was it? Was that the idea with that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because if you take out the I, it's like an anagram of Earth, and it's supposed to be like, because there's a lot of like weather and nature names in Final Fantasy names, and she's like a Earth thing.
Huh.
So yeah, that's why the TH is correct and not the S.
Okay.
After all those flashbacks, which takes like half the episode, Aerie is talking to Lane in her room, and he says that there's a problem with her, and she's like, "Don't talk about me like I'm hardware," and he's like, "You know what? You're right. You're software." And she's like supposed to be a program to like break down this barrier. She has this vision where she sees Chise, the girl that killed herself at the beginning of the show, and she's like, there's nothing easy about killing yourself. It's not that great. And then she sees the guy that killed himself in the club, and he's like, you should kill yourself, Lane. Come join us. After all, you made me do it. And then suddenly she has a gun in her hand, and he's like, it's super easy. Just, shoot yourself.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's basically, they're really trying to get her to give up that physical form and come to the other side.
Yeah, but instead, what she does, it mentions before Eerie visits her again, is that she's downloaded her Navi into her own brain. So she doesn't need to be connected to her Navi anymore to sort of like use and experience the wired. Like she's essentially, they're saying that you're essentially omnipotent at all times now. So what she does instead of killing herself, she goes to visit Alice in her room where she appears as like, she's the Area 51 alien, but just with her normal head on that body. Why
it's
did
a
they
good
do that?
creepy image.
Yeah.
No, it's good. It's creepy. It's because she's now such a strange, inhuman thing to Alice, like an alien.
That's
and
true.
she also has the red and green striped shirt, which is something that every once in a while when Lane goes on the internet, you hear a bunch of people talking and they're talking about random disconnected things. And you hear someone mentioning like, every night in my room, there's a child looking at me with a red and green shirt. Like, it's a help. It's a spooky creepypasta thing.
Yeah, like it's the last thing you see before you die type stuff.
Yeah.
I like that they even sort of referenced creepypasta, which I think was a thing on the internet in 99.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like that it's one of those things where it's like you don't know if she was seeing a Lane or if Lane has just like somehow incorporated that into herself as this like internet meme entity.
But the thing is that she definitely appears to
now
Alice.
She's ready.
Yeah, she definitely appears to Alice. And she goes to Alice and says, listen, don't worry. It's going to be fine. I now have the ability to erase people's memories, and I'm going to erase that they ever heard that rumor about you. So it's all going to be good. Don't stress.
Yeah, and Alice is just like, I'm so fucking scared. What the fuck is going on?
Yeah. And she's like, anything's possible now. You don't need a computer to get on the wide. See ya. And leaves. And the next day, Alice goes to school, and no one knows about the rumor. It's all been forgotten. And she looks over at Lane, and Lane is sort of like, hey, it's all good, right?
But she smiles, and her smile looks like the troll Lane, because it's like, okay, now she's becoming this kind of like, she just does whatever she wants selfishly kind of person.
Yeah.
So in a way, like, even though like she's like, oh, I'm doing it to help my friend, it's kind of like an abuse of power kind of thing.
It is. And it's also like the fact that she made sure that Alice remembers that this all happened because she wants to prove to Alice that she's her friend and she's doing something nice for her. And without realizing that this is incredibly creepy for Alice. Like, this isn't fun. and Alice is just sort of genuinely freaked out by that. There's this like god over there who wants to be buddies.
Yeah, because like episode 12 starts with her and she's like just in class being all like, I don't like this.
Yeah,
and Lane is like being friends with everyone and she messages her and it's like, it's fine, you should just rewrite bad memories.
Yeah, it's real easy. And she looks over and Lane's just smiling at her. It's a nice smile, but it's too creepy knowing what Lane has done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then it cuts to Lane and she's like talking to the camera and she's like, I only have substance within the memories of others since I never had a physical form. So now I understand. That's why there were so many me's, because I was inside a lot of people. And then that's when they show the newscaster where he's like talking about something else. And then he's like, in other news, let's all love Lane. Let's all love Lane. Let's love Lane. Love Lane.
Yeah, that was creepy. That was real creepy.
It's great. Let's all love Lane.
Yeah, like it's like we've entered this world where this is kind of what she wants to approach, where she ends up being like a quite visible god almost. Which she's not doing yet, but that's kind of what she's doing to Alice.
Yeah, this is like, is this what you want to be, Lane? You just want to be someone who like forces everyone to like you by abusing your power.
Yeah. And you do sort of get the impression that Lane is inexperienced enough to not. She doesn't really understand that this is what she's doing to Alice. Like this, she's not like deliberately flexing her power to try and intimidate Alice into liking her. She thinks she's actually like trying to do something nice by Alice. She just doesn't realize how, because she was never human. She doesn't realize that this power is terrifying.
Yeah. Plus, even if she was human, she's just a middle school baby.
Yeah.
She's working it out. So the agents.
They're in a car park and they seem really like stressed and pissed off about something. Yeah. And the Tachibana guy turns up and gives them some cash and says, you guys should probably go somewhere where there's no power lines or satellites. And Tall Agent is like, you fucking know there is no one on Earth like that anymore. And he goes, well, you should try and find one, and leaves.
Yep, you're all fucked. Everything's you're gonna get fucked up.
Yeah, and then Shithead Agent starts screaming and dies. And then Tall Agent, you zoom right into his eye, and there's like a little version of Lane there. And then he starts screaming, and then he dies. So...
Wait, I don't know if he dies. You just see him screaming, and it cuts away.
Well, the other guy died. You'd assume.
Maybe, yeah. Probably.
Anyway, so Alice at this point is disturbed enough by everything that's going on, so she decides to go and visit Lane at home. And she goes into what is Lane's incredibly creepy house at this point.
Yeah.
All the lights are
Everything's
off.
all fucked up in there.
Yeah, there's like the sink is full of rotting food. All the plants are dead. Like she goes to walk up the stairs, which is just sort of covered in crap, and then Lane's sister's just standing at the top of the stairs, still there, just beep beep ga. And the horror in this bit is played really well.
Yeah.
It really is just Alice walking around an incredibly creepy haunted house. Like
yeah. and it's like, especially knowing that like we have at least some context for some of this, but she doesn't at all.
No, this is just like, how the fuck is Lane, like what is Lane that she's just living in this house where there's just this shell of a human wandering around and it's just full of garbage and it's just, yeah, it's very creepy. Anyway, so she finally gets up to Lane's room and Lane's there. Like there's like a whole pile of cables just lying on the bed, and Lane just sort of sits up and emerges out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. She explains that like, oh yeah, no, I'm not really human. I'm like, I'm just a program who's meant to sort of destroy the barrier between the real world and the wired. Like that's my whole job.
Yeah.
She seems to have accepted that she is not human at this point, or believes it at least.
Yeah. But then Alice tells her, no, that's not right.
Because she's saying how humans don't need bodies anymore. Like we could all just get rid of them if you wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, she's like, humans are all software. You don't need bodies. It's fine. None of you need a body.
Which is kind of what her classmate who killed herself was saying at the start.
Yeah.
Is it like you don't need your body. You can just forget about your physical body and just exist on the wired. But then like that other version you saw of her when she was talking to Lane in the last episode kind of seemed to regret that.
Yeah. Yeah, she says like, or we don't know exactly how she feels about being on the internet, but at least she says like there's nothing easy about dying, and she seems like kind of sad and regretful.
Yeah, yeah. That's as much as we ever see of it.
So Alice is holding her hand, and then she like puts her hand on her heart, and she's like, "You can feel my heartbeat, right? Doki doki." Lane is like, "Doki doki," and then they like start laughing, and she's like, "Why is it beating so fast?" And Alice is like, "It's because I'm scared."
That was funny.
I'm really scared about all this stuff.
I don't think you understand. This house is incredibly creepy.
Yeah, everything going on is really super fucking freaky.
Yeah.
And then 80 is there, and he's still talking to Lane, and he's like, she's scared of losing her body, like as a person. And he reaches out to Lane, and then Alice is able to see his disembodied hand, like this digital hand coming down.
At first, she just thinks that Lane is talking to the air and is getting freaked out again. But then, yeah.
Yeah, she's like, who are you talking to? Are you talking to God? But then, yeah, she sees the digital hand, and it's like, oh, what the fuck?
And so then we get what was also something that happened a lot in 90s anime. We get Nakira.
Yeah, because Lane is like you wouldn't understand anymore because you don't have a body.
She's talking to Eerie.
Yeah, and so that really upsets Eerie. He's like, how dare you? So he tries to like manifest himself in the real world by glomming all these like weird tech wire bits together, and yeah, it's very Akira.
But it also turns into flesh, like.
Yeah,
but it's a really weird blobby approximation of a human that just has eyes that pop out of random spots, and he's kind of like he's for the most part he's just a big tentacle kind of.
Yeah, this is a big blobby guy.
And he grabs Lane and he grabs Alice and like wraps them up and is trying to crush them, and he's telling Lane that she needs to be debugged. But then Lane like just like whips out her psychic powers and just crushes him with all of the computer equipment in her room. Like bit by bit, she just sort of contains him in a big ball and just. And crushes him.
And Alice is just like so like freaking out the entire time. Well, understandably.
The last episode, Ego, episode 13, it rolls straight back into this moment. And at that point, Alice has just had a nervous breakdown. She's not responding anymore. She's essentially catatonic, but also just screaming.
Yeah, and she's like lashing out, and she cuts Lane's cheek with her nail, and Lane bleeds. Which is like important. It's like, look at how human she is.
Yeah.
There's a part right before that where you see Lane talking to the camera, and she's like, "Oh, that's right. There's no real me since I only exist in other people. But then who's talking? Who's here? Like I must be real in some way." And then you see Alice cut her.
This is why the ending is kind of a bummer. Is that Lane sort of realizes the error of exposing Alice to all of this in a way. Like,
yeah, she's like, "I'm so sorry. Every time I've tried to help you, I've only made things worse for you."
Yeah, and kind of everyone around her, but in particular Alice, because Alice is the only actual friend Lane's ever had.
Yeah. She points that out. She's like, even before I was able to connect to you, like you're the only person who really liked me for me as a person outside of being this internet god thing.
So what she decides to do is use her memory wipe powers to just erase herself from existence in everyone else's mind. Which
it shows a big thing on the screen that's like all reset.
Yeah. Like in tying in with that whole thing about how I only exist if I exist in the minds of others. She's now basically ceasing to exist because no one is going to remember who she is.
Yeah. You might say that she's Madoka herself. What a rip-off of Madoka.
Which hadn't been made at this point.
Yeah.
I suppose Lane is...
From 11 years in the past.
I suppose technically Lane is a magical girl, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, she has transformations.
Kind of. Into troll Lane.
Yeah. You see Alice going to school the next day.
And everything's cool now.
Yeah, at first she seems confused, but then she just says something randomly to her friends about how, I guess if you don't have memories of bad things, it never really happened, did they? And her friends are like, what? That was random. And she's like, don't worry, let's go to class.
Yeah, because at first they're like, hey, are we going to go to Siberia tonight? And she's like, oh, but I want to invite her. And they're like, her? Who are you talking about? Oh, you're talking about her, aren't you? And it's Chise, and she's alive again. And so it's like, she's just this nerd that I guess, like they're like, oh, that nerd, she wouldn't want to come. And then Alice is like, oh, now I understand. If no one remembers it, then it never happens.
And they're like, what?
Yeah. And so then I guess like she's kind of remembers Lane in that moment, but then, probably forgets about her too.
Yeah. We see flashes of all of the characters. So like Chise is still alive. You see the agents. Well, you see, there's this little set, you see like Taro and those kids running around the streets. And then they walk past this dude in a suit who is eerie, who is just complaining about how his bosses don't, get how smart he is and he hates his job and it sucks. And
he's like, I'm going to quit. I'm totally going to quit next time. Ooh.
Yeah, and then he looks over and there's these two dudes on like a cherry picker who are fixing some cable and they were both staring at him and it's the two agents.
No, they don't look at him. You said you thought that they were undercover. I think that they're just construction workers now.
I assume they're still spies.
No, it's way cuter if she rewrote it to where they're just fucking construction workers. I like it.
I just assumed they were like, there's nothing to support this. But the way I read it in my head was that Erie's not wanting to be a guide or anything anymore, but he's still sort of like a troublemaker.
Maybe.
So Tachibana are still having people sort of keep an eye on him, I suppose, which is kind of what they're doing. But
I like the idea that she's like, I'm going to give them some other thing to do. Okay, they'll be construction workers, but I got to keep them together.
Yeah, they're buds. I
can't separate them.
I like their dynamic. You then see Lane, who's just on her own. And despite the fact that she thought this was the right decision, she's really upset. And
yeah, she's like in this big empty city with like digital effects over it. And Lane is like, there's two versions of her talking to herself. And she's like, isn't this what you wanted? Aren't you happy? And she's like, no, I don't like it.
I hate it. I hate not existing. I hate just being alone. And the bolder Lane tells her like, but you get to be a god now. You get to see everything and look at everything.
And she's like, isn't it much easier than being a human? No one will ever judge you. No one will ever hate you. It's the best.
Yeah. And she tells this Lane to fuck off. And that Lane disappears.
Oh yeah, she like glitches out and then goes away. She's like, "No, I want to be a person."
So there's something in the ether in Japan at the time because I really do feel like this has strong parallels to Evangelion in some ways.
Oh yeah,
like in this bit in particular,
with instrumentality and stuff.
Yeah, there's ideas of like the flawed idea that like if you're alone, there's no way of being hurt, but actually being alone sucks more. Is kind of what they're touching on here, which was more the focus. That idea was more the focus in Evangelion, but there's something I don't know what it is. Just something about really lonely people writing anime in the in the late 90s or the 90s. But anyway,
society man.
I didn't quite get this bit. She basically goes
with her dad.
Yeah, she goes to heaven and her dad's there.
I think that's like actually, see, that's why I think that she's not Earth itself. She's like this representative that's supposed to combine the two things. Because, so you see this image of her dad looking down at her from like heaven. Yeah. And I think that's God, like actual God.
Like she rises up to meet him and they sort of sit at a table together.
Yeah, and I like that she's wearing the kigurumi again, and he says, you don't have to wear that anymore, and it kind of has that feeling of like, are you talking about the kigurumi, or are you talking about her flesh body?
Yeah, yeah.
They have that nice meeting, and so that I think that's like, you know, like God, and they talk at various points in the show about like, you know, like what does it mean if there's a God in terms of like, you know, probably not the Christian God, but some kind of like force of, you know, whatever. So I do think that's, you know, like some kind of like force of the earth God thing, and so they're just kind of, it's like checking in with her, and he's like, you loved everyone, didn't you? And she's like, yes, I did. And she's all happy now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that could be right, I guess, because like, yeah.
Plus, I mean, it just makes sense then. It's like, why did it take the form of her dad? It's like, because it's like a God figure thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like her actual dad.
Maybe the Schumann Resonance thing in the earth, that's kind of who he is.
Yeah.
And she really was this thing that was birthed when human sort of collective unconscious interacted with the wired.
Yeah, because she at least, she tells Aerie that, you know, like some force probably manipulated him to do that, and you're not sure if it's her or if it's something that, you know, like made sure she was created, which is what I think this dad figure is.
It seems like every person who's taken any action in the show was manipulated by someone into working on Lain, and none of them really knew it. Like Aerie probably knew more than most, but even he didn't realize he was also being manipulated. Yeah, kind of seems like what's happened. And so this whole thing was just a journey to try and get Lain to this place. And but the thing is, going back to the thing about how, you know, you need to be remembered by someone to exist. The last scene we see is like a little shoot forward in time, where you see an older Alice with her teacher. Yes, and they're a couple now.
Yeah, and this is something I was talking about in the Discord. I feel like this is a legitimate difference in at least otaku culture. I don't know if it's a thing that's different in Japan, but there's a lot of stuff that has this kind of romantic idea of like a marriage promise or that kind of thing between an underage girl and an adult guy. Yeah. And, you know, it's like an I'll wait for you kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't like it.
And the thing is, it doesn't, like, I could get that in a young girl's fantasy type product.
Yeah.
The way that, like you said, that shit in Sailor Moon, where she's dating a dude who is much older than her. Like she's a middle schooler and dating a college student, which the show never acknowledges as fucked. But Sailor Moon is a young girl's fantasy, like a romantic fantasy. And that's part of a young girl's romantic fantasy. That's why it exists. But the difference here is that, like, Alice is not the protagonist of this story. Like, we're not experiencing any of this through her. So this is more treating this like it's just a legit thing that can happen.
Yeah.
Which is
and it's
odd.
like, again, like that kind of happened in Raising Project with Top Speed.
Yeah.
And it's in Violet Evergarden.
Yeah.
And there just seems to be like, it just seems to like keep coming up. And it's like, is this genuinely something that is not considered creepy to most people who watch anime over there?
But that's the other thing. It's, again, is this a general Japanese culture thing, or is it just an anime culture thing? Because the two are different.
Yeah, I really don't know.
Yeah, there are things that fly a lot more in anime that don't fly in.
Who fucking knows?
Yeah, but we're getting hung up on this. But the point is, it was like, this is the one thing in Lain that is like, doesn't feel like it was supposed to be creepy, but is.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, now Alice is an adult and she has a nice husband and she's having a great time. It's the guy that was fucking her when she was in middle school.
Yeah, or at minimum, she was having fantasies about, like, or something. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
The point is, we've jumped forward in time. We see them, and then she sees Lain, like the Lain we know, the Lain who was the middle school age, standing on like a pedestrian overpass. And she sort of recognizes her, but she can't tell. And
yeah, she's like, "Where do I know her from?"
Yeah, and she goes up to her and says, "Hi," like introduces herself and says, "Did I?" Because I think she's a teacher, and she says something about like, "Did you go to a school that I teach at? I feel like I know you from somewhere." And Lane's like, "No."
Yeah, she's like, "It's our first time meeting."
Yeah, and she's like, "Oh, okay."
And then so her husband comes over, is like, "Is this someone you know?" And she's like, "Oh no, maybe I was mistaken."
And she goes, "Okay, well, I might see you around." I felt like the implication there with the whole thing about you only existing if you're remembered is that even that tiny thread in Alice's mind is enough for Lane to continue to sort of exist in a way.
Yeah, and she's like, we can always have more meetings like this. Like, I can always, if my existence is only valid if other people can remember me, there's always opportunities as long as I exist to create those kinds of memories.
Yeah, tying into the scene we saw before where she's talking to her dad about how you really did love everyone, and what her more confident self was saying about, you get to be omnipotent, is that this is what Lane is going to do, is from now on, is just sort of watch and sort of, look at humans, because she likes humans. She thought they were cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like maybe she, is going to be more hands-off, but she's like come to terms with like what she is in herself and not questioning whether she's real or not or whatnot. But it's still definitely very like bittersweet.
It is, because it's like, you thought that the only way for you to solve this problem was for you to just cease to exist. And sure, you still get to keep an eye on everyone, but you did end up being alone.
Yeah.
Which is
kinda.
Yeah, that's the end. That's the end of the series.
Yeah.
I guess I feel like maybe the reason it does feel like more of a bummer than maybe it's supposed to is that one of the things that Lane was fighting against the entire time in the series was being alone. And one of the sort of more horror-ish things that happens to her is that she gets left alone.
But at the same time, it's like, I think now she doesn't feel alone because like she can always go and like meet these people that she loves. Like, again, even if they won't remember her or whatnot, and she can be around everyone.
I suppose.
But it is still, because it's like she was resisting being anything other than human, but ultimately the thing that she ends up as is definitely not human.
No,
so it's like...
It's this thing of like she was trying not to be alone, and she was trying to prove that she exists. And the form she eventually chooses, and she chooses it because she thinks that if she does exist, she's going to hurt people, is this form where she is just... not really there for the most part.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's like obviously I keep thinking about Gadoka, which is obviously a later thing.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Gen Urobuchi likes this anime. This seems like something that he'd be into.
This seems his thing, yeah.
But it's that I gave up my humanity because I just love everyone so much, but I'm okay with it because I love everyone so much.
Yeah, yeah. But it's just sort of like, just have another crack. You could probably just have another go at this.
Well, that's what the other Lane was suggesting.
Kind of, yeah. Well, no, I think that the really confident Lane seemed perfectly happy with the idea of being an omnipresent God. Like,
yeah.
But the thing is that other more confident Lane knew exactly what she was the entire time. It seems like.
Yeah. I guess it's the kind of thing where, like, for her to exist at all, it would require this whole situation where, like, 80 had made himself a god and people were trying to use her to various ends. And so in order to avoid all of that, the only solution is for her to not exist.
Yeah, because there was a scene, there was like a very brief scene we saw earlier, which was like a flashback to her being introduced to her family, kind of. Like someone...
Yeah, and it's like these two people in a suit shove her into shove her into the room.
And the family's just sort of standing there, and that's sort of like, I guess, the start of it all. So someone did make her manifest as a real person to kick all of this off, but it's never completely clear who that was. I mean, you assume that Eerie had something to do with it.
Yeah, I think he's definitely who gave her a body.
Yeah, but like, how did he do that? Like, sorry.
I don't know.
It's one of those things where that aspect of it you never get really completely answered.
Yeah, that aspect is definitely surreal because, like, until that moment where Alice cuts her, you could kind of guess that, like, it's kind of like the Siberia thing. Like, maybe she never had a physical form. Maybe her house doesn't even, like, physically exist, Or it's like an abandoned house.
Yeah.
And every person who thinks they've interacted with her has just had their memories overwritten.
Yeah.
And that could actually be the case until that moment where
you see her bleed.
She's cut.
Yeah, and it's like, well, okay. I guess you are.
Yeah,
real.
so it's like at least now she definitely somehow physically exists. Maybe just because she's like the strength of her presence in the world is strong enough or whatever.
There's an argument to be made that she actually didn't fully exist at first, but she sort of eventually came to exist by that point.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. I mean, like, the thing is, like, with the parents and them disappearing, her sister definitely existed because she's still there, even though, like, she serves no purpose at the end at that point. Like, whoever set her up just left her there as this, like, this Hulk.
But I feel like if she's still there just going beep, beep, ga and hasn't been like eating or anything, maybe she maybe she is just data.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Obviously, some of that stuff it leaves purposefully vague.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So like, there's no perfect answer to it.
This is one of the things I liked about this show was that the vagueness does feel quite deliberate because it lets them, like I was saying before, it lets them do their thing where they're doing like an analogy to what it is like to be online and what online culture is like, but also it's a sci-fi thing where like, what if your id, your ego, and your super ego were just running around doing what they wanted?
Yeah, I mean, that's the best kind of sci-fi is where, you know, like it's using some kind of weird science fiction premise as a way to explore like a very human thing.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what it's good for.
It is, yeah. I mean, and it is also like, as much as it isn't the point of Lain, trying to think about how the logistics works is fun. Trying to pass what the fuck actually took place is kind of, is kind of cool. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and that's like the difference of like, you have to have a really strong story to make me actually want to do that and not think that it's just you being like a wishy-washy writer or whatnot.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, Lain does actually meet that level.
It does because it's obviously very thoughtful.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many ideas packed into this show. Like, they're not all like separate ideas. These are all like someone thinking about this one concept and all of the different ways and things that could happen and all the things that would make you think about. Like, the people that made this show did think really deeply about this idea, and it's all there. Like, it's vague, but it's all kind of there, and it does leave you thinking about the same thing, which is it's good.
Yay!
I mean,
Yay, anime.
This being the thing, I can't imagine what I would have thought of this if I saw it at 11. Like, you definitely wouldn't have gotten all of this stuff, but it probably would have seemed cool and weird, I suppose.
No, yeah, and it's like I definitely I'm trying to remember like what all I knew. It's like I knew things were being fucked up with her in the internet and becoming like not real somehow. But yeah, it's like I feel like my fascination with that as a young person probably said a lot about like my tastes and how I would grow up to love shit like this.
Yeah.
It's very formative.
Yeah, and like how much of it influenced you and how much of it was just already in you and this just spoke to you. Which is kind of what art does to some extent.
Even as a young person, it's like I don't understand it, but I feel something here that I'm definitely picking up on.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm picking up on your Schumann Resonance.
Like the thing about like, you know, the art that speaks to you is made for you, but it speaks to you because you were able to hear it too. So, yeah.
Oh. Yeah, this and Majora's Mask. That's me.
Slightly different level of storytelling, but yeah.
I don't know. They're both that kind of like, look, they've got overlapping realities. They've got fucking anxiety ass shit.
They do. I don't feel like Majora's Mask has quite that level of depth.
What I'm saying is that Majora's Mask and Lain are the same thing. In this 300-word essay, I will explain. Wait, only 300 words though.
In this 4.5-hour YouTube video, I will explain.
Yes, in this TED Talk, I will explain.
I wouldn't disagree that Majora's Mask has themes in it that are unusual for a Zelda game.
Oh, fuck it, yes! Yeah, it's depression in a video game!
Yeah. There's a lot of very odd... It has a very odd tone compared to a lot of the other Zeldas. It has a very odd story. And the mechanic is, like, really cool as well, which is why I've got high hopes for that new version of Zelda that's coming out that seems to be running on the same engine as Breath of the Wild, but it wants to do horror again. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
This could be cool.
Baby me loved that kind of horror, that kind of weird existential anxiety horror.
Yeah. Reality's there, but it's not. Something's off, and you just sort of you dread it. The thing that was cool about the looping in Majora's Mask was the way that after a while you do start to become detached from those people and those characters.
Yeah, and you know that they're dying most of the time.
Yeah, and then you just go back and start
Even
again.
if you help them in one thing, they're gonna fucking have a bad time.
And then you can't help everyone in every loop either. So there's a lot of people who you're just not going to help that loop, and that's what that is.
Yeah, but at least you still got that mask, fucker. Hope you're happy. Anyways, this was not the Majora's Mask cast.
No. But this is also why Groundhog Day is one of the better sci-fi movies of the last 40 years. So also an amazing film. Anyway, but yes, Lain, watch it. Even though you know what just happened, watch it. Go watch it. It's really good.
Yeah, seriously, if you listen to this whole thing without having watched it already, which understandable, you know, it's cool that you wanted to listen to us talk about the show.
Yeah.
But you should still go see it because, like I said, like this, I watched it twice for the sake of this podcast, and I think I'd seen the whole series through like 3 times before during various times in my life, and every time I come away with like a slightly different interpretation and like, oh, this now relates to me on this level and stuff. Like there's a lot to appreciate.
There's a lot to process and to think about, and it looks cool. It has an awesome aesthetic.
Yeah, like, oh god, there's so much they do with the minimalized aesthetic that you just like have to see to appreciate.
Yeah. There's a lot going on. There's a lot in there that we haven't touched on, just because it is very difficult to cover the entire thing. But yeah, no, definitely go watch it. It's if you're in America, it is all free on YouTube. If you're not in America, you probably already have a VPN, so you can see all the things Americans do.
And it's like, or pirate it, because I mean, I guess it's not even illegal now. It's fucking open source.
That's true, actually.
So just get it however you can get it, man.
Yeah.
It's all cool.
And because it's old anime, it's only SD, so the files you'd be pirating are very small, so it'll download quick.
Yeah, don't even worry about it.
That's Lane.
All right. Anime. But in the meantime, go watch Lane. If you've already seen it, go watch it again.
Yeah. Watch some anime. And follow us on Twitter. And Twitter is the best stuff. All right.
Have a nice anime.
See you.